With the first act of Pokemon Horizon, Liko and Roy's departure now in the books, I thought I would compile all of my reviews for this arc for each individual episode. The first arc of Pokemon Horizons is really an introduction arc, introducing our characters, introducing the main plot devices of the story, and introducing the villains. Something of note is that when Terapagos debuted here originally, we didn't know what Terapagos looked like in the game, so the anime was the first place we saw it. So the first season was really cool because it showed us powers and abilities from Terapagos that we wouldn't learn of even in the games. It's an enjoyable season as it feels like every week we're just getting more and more new stories. I really enjoyed this first season. Each individual episode review should be both in the description with a timestamp and as a chapter. Enjoy! Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is finally time for the brand new Pokemon Horizon series. Episode 1 is part 1 of an hour-long special and it's titled The Pendant of Beginning. There's so many things to talk about, so let's begin. Let's start with the main character. The main character of this new series is Liko, and we'll learn about Roy later on in the future. Liko is a shy girl from Paldea. She overthinks a lot and is always apologizing, even for the smallest things. Unlike characters in the past, we actually get to hear Liko's inner monologue quite frequently. Usually we only hear characters' inner monologue when they're trying to strategize in battle, but here we get to see it in just normal, everyday situations of her talking her way through things. She's always thinking about things, and I actually really like this. I hope this is something that continues in the future. She says she arrived in Kanto to find something, and we don't really know what that something is, but I suspect it's about herself. It's a coming-of-age story where our heroes trying to figure out their life. She's roommates with Anne, a messy girl with a lot of confidence, and the two quickly become friends, and the next day we learn that all the students in the school are about to get their starting Pokemon. Anne gets Oshawott, and when Liko picks her Pokeball, she gets Sprigatito. We see throughout the episode that at first it doesn't look like the two are going to get along. Sprigatito is pretty similar to Liko in that when it does things, people question why it's doing the things it's doing, similar to how people view Liko. Throughout the episode, Liko tries to find out more about Sprigatito, where it likes to sleep, what it likes, and as well as trains with it to learn leafage. But it seems to struggle. Sometimes it does it, but fails, sometimes it just doesn't want to train. It's a very casual Pokemon, however, she does end up getting closer with it as time moves on. One night, when Liko is drawing out her thoughts in her diary, which is something really unique, we learn about a pendant given to her by her grandmother to keep her safe, that she believes is a good luck charm. And while she doesn't know it, that pendant is going to attract a lot of people to her, including bad guys. It's break time from school, and Anne heads back to her family for this break while Liko stays behind in school. However, while she's doing that, two groups of people are also looking for her. The ones wearing a suit are the first to get by, forging a letter from her grandmother and telling her to bring her pendant out. And unlike Ash Ketchum, who probably would have done this exact same thing with no questions, Liko is immediately suspicious and leaves the room through the window. They do eventually catch up to her, however, then the second group of people, and in this case, the guy from that group, arrives with a Charizard. The first dude brings out his Ceruledge to challenge the second guy, and the two begin fighting. However, the fighting is causing damage to the school. Liko decides that she doesn't want the school to get in a crossfire, so she and Sprigatito get on top of the roof and try to jump to another. As she jumps though, however, a stray Psycho Cut is about to hit her when all of a sudden her pendant activates, creating a bubble shield that protects her, and that's where we end this first part. What an explosive way to start a series. This episode does a great job of introducing us to our main characters and her Pokemon, showing their characteristics. We learn a lot about the type of person Liko is. Her inner monologue helps us connect with her as a character because her fears and ideals are really based on real things that kids that her age would be think about. We get fun side characters introduced like Anne and the recurring person in the Nidorina costume, the YouTuber. And then we get introduced to the main villain in the secondary group, shrouded in mystery, with the only thing we know being that the pendant that Liko has is important. Wow, what a way to hook people in. This is all fascinating stuff. I can't wait to see what happens going forward. Continuing the hour-long special, episode 2 is part 2 of the Pendant of Beginning, the episode continuing where it left off, with Liko's pendant protecting her from a stray Psycho Cut. What happens here? Let's discuss. Inside the bubble shield of energy, we see a Pokemon that we don't even know the name of. It looks like a baby version of Terapagos, but so far we don't know anything about it. After protecting Liko, it then retracts back to Liko's pendant. Since she got saved midair, once the shield goes away, she starts falling. Luckily, she's saved by the guy with the goggles as he tells the fella in the suit that he'll see him another time. We then let her learn that the group going after Liko and her pendant are called the Explorers. They actually have a theme to them that only works in Japanese. The main guy's name is Ametheo, and the Pokemon they ride on all start with A in Japanese. However, for the English translation for these Pokemon, that doesn't really work, so I wonder if they're going to address that. They decide to continue to follow Liko and the man in the Charizard, who we learn is named Freed. Just as Liko is about to ask Freed to let her go, they arrive at this massive airship that we partially saw last episode called the Brave Asagi. Once they land there, we also meet two other people, Molly and Murdoch. We also see the person fueling the ship, who is Orla. There's also an old man on the ship who we don't get the name to, but he has been officially announced as Ludlow. Collectively, they are the Rising Volt Tacklers. Why are they called the Rising Volt Tacklers? Because they also have Captain Pikachu. However, before Liko can get an explanation as to why she was brought there, the explorers catch up to the air vessel, so Captain Freed has to go back to the ship to take over from Captain Pikachu. He takes the ship to the storm to try to get away from the explorers. However, the explorers break through their protective barrier and get in. Ametheo and the explorers arrive where Liko is, and they say that originally they just wanted the pendant. However, the power it showed earlier shows that Liko's also has some secrets, so they're going to take her too. She says no at first, but when her Sprigatito is caught by one of them, she agrees to go to protect the rest of the Pokemon in the ship. However, before they can take her away, Freed is back once again, and he challenges Ametheo. This time, however, he brings out Captain Pikachu. We get a short but well choreographed fight. However, there's damage being done to the ship by Ametheo's Surulege, similar to how it was done in the school, and Liko doesn't want to see other Pokemon get hurt. She tells Freed to stop. However, her Sprigatito jumps away from her and begins snarling and yelling at her. Liko then realizes that she's just making excuses for herself, so she gets in front and gets ready to fight. When she has Sprigatito use Leaf Edge, all of that training pays off, as the blast is so much bigger and stronger than it was before. It causes the explorers to try and protect themselves from the move. However, the ship begins tilting, causing Sprigatito to lose balance and fall off the ship. Freed tries to save it, but just narrowly misses. Ametheo captures it, however, in his Corviknight and decides to retreat with Sprigatito, basically kidnapping it, and that's where the episode ends. Back-to-back cliffhangers of the scale. I can't remember the last time Pokemon did something like this. What a way to end the hour-long special. Another banger episode where we learn a lot. This time about the Rising Volt Tacklers, its cast of characters. However, we only get a small introduction to them, so I hope to learn more about them in the future as the story progresses. We also learn a bit more about the Explorers, what their motivation is. However, most of it is still shrouded in mystery. Why do they know about Liko's pendant? What are their goals? All of those are still left unanswered, so it keeps the story intriguing. I can't wait for the next episode because I want to see what happens next. How will Liko get her Pokemon back? I am really excited. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 3 of Horizons is out, and it's titled, As Long As I'm With Sprigatito. Continuing from the end of last episode where the explorers kidnapped Sprigatito, this episode, Liko is trying to find her beloved Pokemon. How will she be able to do it? Let's find out. We get new information here about the Rising Volt Tacklers that we didn't get before, and that's that Liko's mom actually hired them as bodyguards to protect Liko. That explains why they were looking for her in the first episode and how they found her. However, there still remains a lot of questions. Mainly, if Liko's mom knew something like this was going to happen, why did she send Liko out with a pendant like that? What's the history behind Liko's mom and these people? What's the history behind the pendant? So many questions are raised by this one revelation so far, and the series has done that type of reveal really well in every episode so far. After waking up in the airship, Liko finds out that while Freed wasn't able to find exactly where they took Sprigatito, he did find the towns that the explorers landed on, so they need to go look for it over there. We learn a bit more about the Volt Tacklers here. Freed seems to be the leader, Murdoch is the cook of the group, Orla is the mechanic, and Molly is the healer, as she has Liko go fetch her a bunch of potions once they land in the town. While in the Pokemon Center, a girl comes in distressed about her Pokemon who was hurt due to her not commanding it properly, and Liko realizes that it isn't just her who has those fears of being a new trainer. As Nurse Joy completes her order and gives Liko multiple boxes of stuff, another woman comes out of a store nearby, and Murdoch's Rockruff smells the scent of Liko's Sprigatito on her. That woman, by the way, is named Konya. I don't think we heard the name in the episode, but since they're going to be recurring, I thought I would just mention it here. The bigger guy of the group is named Zur. Liko begins chasing Konya, who calls Ametheo while running, and Ametheo tells her to bring them to the warehouse. Meanwhile, Zur puts some sort of tracking device at the bottom of our ship for our heroes, which sets them up to be recurring villains since they can now track our heroes. Liko arrives at the warehouse where Konya went to and is ready to go, but Freed stops her. Instead of going in guns blazing, they come up with a plan. That plan includes Freed playing to Ametheo's ego and challenging him to a battle. A very nicely animated battle, I might add. Meanwhile, Liko uses a rock roast nose to find where Sprigatito is. Once she finds it, she breaks in a door to save it, and the two get out only to be stopped by Konya, who's outside. I haven't mentioned this yet, but Konya finds Sprigatito really cute and thinks they'll become the best of friends. However, that isn't just randomly. Sprigatito has been playing her to a certain degree by acting cute to her to get more food. So when she calls Sprigatito's name and it turns away, she's devastated. She then brings out her Skarmory to stop the grass type. However, Liko and Sprigatito are more confident now because of their experiences together, so she steps up, and once again, Sprigatito makes a massive blast of Leaf Edge. It isn't to beat Skarmory in the battle, but it's to get away. And Freed, who at this point is at the top of the roof battling, sees Liko's Leaf Edge and her running away, which is his sign to jump off the building and say sayonara to Ametheo and whisk away in his Charizard. Liko has officially saved her Pokemon. By evening, Liko's contemplating everything that her grandma told her in the past and how they're slowly starting to come true. She realizes that she's a trainer now because of Sprigatito. She then comes outside to where everyone is of the tacklers, and she tells them that she trusts them now and she hopes to stay with them to figure out the mysteries of this pendant. They all agree, and we also learn here that the Rising Volt Tackler's goal is to solve the mysteries of the world and Pokemon. Later, when she talks to Anna on her tablet, we also learn that Liko will be attending school remotely once it returns. That fixes the issue that arises with her just suddenly leaving to go on an adventure. However, first, the Rising Volt Tacklers have to go to Liko's house in Paldea to get the bodyguard fee from her mom. We then see Roy come out of his house and saying hello to his grandfather before running towards the beach. I can't tell what town that is, but I think it might be Paldea. The place he's running down looks a lot like the starting town in the game, and that would make sense if the Rising Volt Tacklers are going there next, and that's where we meet Roy. He finds the sale of the Brave Asagi, and that's where we leave off. I really liked this episode. It was well balanced with action, plot, and moments of introspection from Liko. We still don't really have a hang of how this series is going to flow. I thought it was going to be episodic, which it might still be. However, so far the story is serialized. I guess once Roy gets introduced, we'll know about the real structure of the anime. One thing I do have to give this series so far is the animation quality hasn't dropped off at all. That might sound strange seeing how it's only the third episode. However, with Pokemon Journeys in 2019, by the time the third episode was out, you could tell the cracks in the production because the battle between the Gyarados and Tyranitar vs Pikachu was already looking pretty bad. This series seems to be faring much better, which is a good sign. I can't wait for Roy's story next, and as for this episode, I really enjoyed it. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 4 of Pokemon Horizons titled The Treasure That Washed Ashore just dropped. We are finally introduced to Roy this episode. Let's see how he'll fit into the story. So I assumed that last time that this island that Roy was on was Paldea. However, it turns out it's actually off the coast of Kanto. Once she comes in for breakfast, Freed gives Liko the job to observe the main deck, but before she can do her job, the Brave Asagi starts descending because of some holes in the ship that need to be patched up. Luckily, Freed knows someone on this island that can help them. Fuecoco, one of the Pokemon of the ship, is playing with Freed's Charizard before Freed and the Charizard leave. However, Fuecoco also slides and falls off the edge of the ship since the barrier is turned off for now. Fuecoco lands in the water fine and walks off the beach hungry. As it's walking around this area in the forest, it smells some berries under a tree and it eats all the berries there. Then it finds a small tent in the forest and goes there, presumably to find some more food. When feeding all the Pokemon in the ship, Liko realizes that Fuecoco is missing. She asks around for it before learning that it likes to sing and that it admires Charizard. Once she goes to the observation deck, she sees its claw mark from when it tried to hang on and notices that it might have fell off the ship. She goes down and sees its footsteps in the beach and begins following it. That's when she comes across the pile of berries that have been eaten by Fuecoco. However, while she's looking there, a horde of forest Pokemon see Liko near their food that's now missing and are unhappy and start trying to catch her as she runs away. Meanwhile, Roy finishes his class for the day outside. This is where we see, by the way, that the tablet and the phone that we've seen in the series so far aren't two separate things. In fact, people can just stretch out their phone to make a tablet, which is crazy technology. In class, we learned that no one in this island that Roy lives on is a trainer. However, his goal is to be a trainer unlike everyone else. After his class, he heads back to his secret base but sees that it's been raided for food. He then sees footsteps, which are Fuecoco's, before hearing Fuecoco singing in the distance. He follows the voice before seeing Fuecoco sing sitting at the top of a hill. When he comes up behind it, however, Fuecoco gets scared and runs away. Luckily, Roy saves it from tumbling down a small crevice. However, Roy also spots the brave Asagi when he catches Fuecoco. Roy and Fuecoco talk and get a little closer here as it gets Fuecoco to get comfortable around it and sing in front of it. However, here is where they hear Liko being chased by the forest Pokemon. He ends up saving her by distracting all the forest Pokemon by throwing a rock at some trees. When they run away to the beach, that's when we learn a bit more about Roy. The type of trainer he wants to become is like the one of the ancient adventurer that his grandfather used to tell him about. The Pokeball he possesses is some sort of ancient Pokeball. However, before we can learn more, the forest Pokemon that were chasing them earlier catch up to them. Liko tries to battle them, but Fuecoco can't use a fire move, so they're caught by String Shot and dragged back to the tree where Fuecoco ate all of their berries, and our heroes figure out why the Pokemon are so upset. While this is all happening, Free talks to the guy who helped him out in the past, who turns out to be Roy's grandfather. However, this time, he isn't as accommodating because he thought that he came back to investigate. What exactly? We're not told or given a hint. However, as this conversation is happening, someone else from the neighborhood says that the forest Pokemon are angry. Professor Freed goes to check out the issue, and he eventually gets to Liko and Roy, where he sees them trapped with the string shots. Freed realizes he needs to calm the Pokemon down first, so him and Cap use the string shot to get the Pokemon that are shooting the string shot at them caught. He then gives them all lumberries to calm them down. Roy then introduces himself to Professor Freed and thanks him for saving it, but before they leave, Liko and Roy realize that they have to make it right for the Pokemon, so they collect a whole bunch of berries for the Pokemon to eat before leaving. Roy seems sad that he can't go on this grand adventure like Liko can. It's nighttime and Fuecoco's singing. However, Liko questions why her pendant was shining when she was running away, and I didn't mention this at first, but in the forest while they were running away, her pendant started shining. And while we don't get a definitive answer here, it seems like the Pokeball that Roy possessed had something to do with it. Meanwhile, we learn a bit more about the explorers who are still tracking our heroes in a submarine. They report to someone named Master Gibeon. Amethio is speaking to someone else about the info he's gathered so far. Apparently, this person was credited as Hamber, but I don't think that was actually said in the episode itself. And the episode ends with the explorers following our heroes since they have the trackers underneath the brave Asagi. This is a fun episode that told us a bit more about Roy while also leaving some questions to be answered. What did Roy's grandfather want Free to investigate? Who is this Master Gibeon person? There are a few different questions that have been brought about here that it'll be interesting to see where the story's heading. I was also wondering how Roy was going to get involved in the story, and it didn't happen here. However, there are bits of setup here already, including Roy's relationship with Fuecoco and Roy's grandfather already knowing Freed. I'm excited to see the full team assemble so we can get an idea of what the direction of this series is going to be heading forward. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 5 of Pokemon Horizons titled I Found You, Fuecoco just dropped, and this is a continuation from the previous episode where we first meet Roy. Let's see how he'll get more involved in this story. The episode begins with Roy sneaking into the brave Asagi before being caught by Captain Pikachu. He's there to meet and become partners with Fuecoco. However, Freed tells him that it isn't just his feeling he needs to consider, he also needs to figure out how Fuecoco feels. Freed tells him, however, that he can stay for the night, and if he can find Fuecoco, they can hang out and see how each other feel. Liko helps him look for Fuecoco, however, Fuecoco is somewhere in the ship's cargo, so they can't find it for the night. However, Roy is still optimistic as he sings Fuecoco's song at night. The next morning, everyone seems refreshed except Molly, who is up all night trying to fix the holes in the ship. Roy thinks that they can use the Pokemon in the island as well as some of his grandfather's ideas to help fix the ship. Freed agrees and the three head back down to the island. Roy also leaves some berries for Fuecoco in the kitchen to eat. So when it wakes up and learns that the berries were from Roy through Molly, it leaves the ship to search the island for Roy. Roy's grandfather, as we talked about previously, is a village elder who Freed talked to last episode. He's upset at Roy for boarding the ship without permission. However, since the Rising Voltacklers took care of him for the night, the elder brings them food and lunch. And here, they get the idea to use String Shot from Pokemon from the forest to fix the ship's hole. While this is happening, Fuecoco is searching for Roy in the island and can't find him. However, while at the beach, Fuecoco sees the explorers looking for Liko and the pendant. It overhears their plan of finding the brave Asagi and their plan to distract the ship members while Amethio looks for Liko. It begins running to try and tell our heroes what it heard. Eventually, it runs by Roy, who sees it panicking, pointing towards where the ship is, which is towards the beach. Seeing this, Freed heads that way. In the beach, we also see Konya and Zar starting a battle against Orla and Murdoch. Amithio and Fried also start battling as well. Since Zar is doing well against the Metagross, Konya decides to go look for Liko. After explaining to Roy and his grandfather about the explorers, Liko can't stand all the battle happening because of her pendant, so she heads to the forest, where Roy asks the forest Pokemon to help them. Both the kids are trembling, which is not something you actually saw often with Ash in the older anime. However, it makes sense since it's more realistic here that kids of this age would be terrified of what's happening right now. However, their Pokemon reassure them. Konya catches up to Liko to battle her and take her pendant, and Roy goes to the beach to help fix the ship. The forest Pokemon get to the ship and use String Shot to patch the holes up, allowing it to fly back in the air. Meanwhile, Roy sees Fuecoco get back up from a rock blast ready to battle, so he steps up. He tries to have Fuecoco use Ember, but it fails. However, Liko then arrives, having defeated Konya's Golduck with her Sprigatito, and tells Roy that he needs to tell Fuecoco how he feels in order to be able to perform their moves together. Before we talk about that, I will say seeing Liko's first actual victory not be on screen really sucks. Yes, she's used Leafage in the past successfully, but that's mainly to get away from situations. Here, she took on a situation head on and won, and we didn't get to see that in this episode since it's focused on Roy. Imagine the first time Ash faced off against Team Rocket, we didn't get to see that battle. That really sucks. Regardless, with the advice that Liko gives her, Roy begins using Fuecoco's song to cheer him on, and eventually Fuecoco gets into it and sends out a massive blast of Ember. However, with Fried not paying attention to Amithio, he gets away and towards Liko with a massive sandstorm blocking the view of everyone else, lunging towards her to get her pendant, and that's where we end the episode. I've said this before, but I love that every episode so far has connected with every previous episode directly. Again, I'm not sure how long this will last because I feel like they probably had the first 8 or so episodes planned out fully with how Roy will join the group. However, after that, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, especially since we know that in the future, our heroes are going to Paldea and even meeting Nemona. But that's for later. As for this episode, it's a fun episode that continues the story of Roy and Fuecoco. I feel like I really can't give my full thoughts on what's happened the last couple episodes so far because it's such a continuation. I feel like once it's fully done and Roy's officially part of the group, I can look back and discuss the whole build-up. Until then, it's exciting and I can't wait to see how this moves forward. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 6 of Pokemon Horizons titled The Ancient Pokeball just dropped, and we finally get to find out what's in Roy's Pokeball, so let's jump into it. Continuing from the last episode where Amithio tries to get Liko, Liko's pendant once again protects her. Fried and Charizard are stopped by Konya and Zur, so Liko and Roy have to battle together against Amithio. Amithio tells them that they can try and take him on together as he brings out a Surge. Liko and Roy try to attack together, but their attacks are brushed off. They even try a second time, and again their attacks are brushed off, and both Sprigatito and Fuecoco are hit with a Psycho Cut. This activates both Blaze and Overgrow on the two Pokemon, but once again, they try a third time and their moves don't do anything, and instead, the two Pokemon are sent flying with Phantom Force. As Roy tries to go to save his Fuecoco, Liko's pendant once again glows, but this time, so does Roy's Pokeball, and a giant yellow flash comes out, unlocking the Pokeball. Out comes a shiny terastallized Rayquaza. It doesn't have any particular terastallization crown, it just has like the diamond shine to it, and maybe it could be not terastallized, it could just be the styling of the Rayquaza, I'm not fully sure. As everyone is shocked, Rayquaza blasts a massive Draco Meteor, forcing the explorers to retreat. Roy tries to have the Rayquaza return to the Pokeball, but it can't, and Rayquaza sees Liko's pendant and looks at her before flying away. They head back to Roy's grandfather's house and discuss the Pokeball. Basically, Roy's grandfather found the Pokeball in the beach as a kid, but he never knew there was a Pokemon there. There's also a legend that the shiny Rayquaza was the Pokemon of the ancient traveler. He thought it was just a story from back in the days. He doesn't know much about Liko's pendant, however. They get a call from Molly and learn that Fuecoco and Sprigatito have both been healed. Hearing this, Roy runs towards the brave Asagi to ask Fuecoco how it feels since he wants to stay with Fuecoco and become its trainer. When it comes out, Fuecoco has a ball in its mouth, confirming the same feeling. So with that, Roy catches Fuecoco. When he hears that the Rising Volt tacklers are about to leave for Paldea, he is sad, but Liko tells him that now that he's a trainer, he can do anything. He's worried about what his grandfather might say, but that's when he arrives at the beach. Facing his grandfather, Roy tells his grandfather that not only does he want to go on an adventure with the Rising Volt tacklers, he wants to capture a legendary Pokemon, but also he wants to help Fuecoco with its dream. And hearing that is enough for his grandfather, as he hands him his bag with his adventuring gear and gives him his blessing to go. We then go back to the dark room where the explorers and Amithio is given a report to Master Gibeon about this mission that he was on and how he failed. Since he failed, however, Gibeon takes the mission away from Amithio and gives it to a new character that we only see here in Shadow named Spinal. He's given the mission to get Liko's pendant. After Amithio leaves, Hamber and Gibeon talk talk and say they found it. I'm not sure if they're referring to the Rayquaza or the pendant Pokemon or both. Regardless, Amicio is upset and he tells Coney and Zerd that he's going after the black Rayquaza. It's evening and Roy's about to board the ship, and he says hi to Captain Pikachu before giving Freed the ship flag that he found in the beach. Once he puts it up, the ship begins to fly away, but as it does, the entire island folk come out to wish him well, including his grandfather. After tearing up and saying goodbye, Roy looks at the vast ocean and the sunset before saying that both him and Liko's adventure begins and that he will capture Rayquaza. This sort of feels like Go's goal. We'll have to see how it differs in this situation. But with that, the episode comes to an end. It finally feels like the first part of the anime, that being the setup, is finally over. However, it's already set up for its next part with the introduction of the new explorer, our heroes heading to Paldea, and it'll be interesting to watch how the next few episodes will go, as we'll really get a good idea as how the series will be structured. As for this episode, it was a nice wrap up. Roy got integrated to the cast, and we got more information on both the Pokeball, while leaving more mystery for the pendant. Why did the pendant resonate with the Pokeball? What's the connection between the ancient traveler and the baby Terrapagos? And what are the Gibeon and the explorers looking for? So much is still left to answer. I can't wait to find out. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 7 of Pokemon Horizons titled Training. Captain Pikachu just dropped, and in this episode, our heroes decide that they have to train to get stronger, so our heroes battle Captain Pikachu to try and learn. How will it go for them? Let's find out. The episode starts with a small preview of Dot, the Nidothing YouTuber. We don't get a good look at her, but she does have purple hair, and it also seems she's been a member of the Rising Bolt Tackler in the ship. We learn later that she's Murdoch's nephew, about Liko and Roy's age, and is the one who created the Volt Tacklers app and the group chat. However, it seems like for now, we won't know much about her. Liko and everyone else is chilling in the ship when Roy arrives where Liko is. He tells her that since they're both trainers now, they should battle. And they actually have a small battle. However, neither Liko or Roy are able to hit each other, and the battle ends in a draw when both of their Pokemon are tired. Freed calls them inside afterwards, and he adds the Rising Volt Tacklers app to their phone. The app is basically a group messenger for all members of the Rising Volt Tacklers. He also adds the Pokedex to Roy's phone, and Roy wants to try and add the Black Rayquaza to his dex. However, he has no idea where to go and find it, so Freed recommends they go talk to Dot. She's the resident information gatherer of the group, but she doesn't really come out much. They arrived at a locked door where they hear the Nidothing music. When they knock at the door, Quaxley comes out and hands them a note. The note says that Roy just got defeated in a battle and doesn't tell them anything about the Rayquaza. Seeing this, both Roy and Liko come up with an idea. They ask Freed to train them, and it isn't just for Dot. Roy actually wants to train because last time they struggled so much facing Amicio before Rayquaza came out, and Liko wants to make sure that she can protect herself and call herself a Rising Bolt Tackler proudly. So Freed decides to help them by having Captain Pikachu train them. Basically, if either Liko or Roy can touch Captain Pikachu, they win. Both characters struggle to attack together or individually. Then Cap uses Double Team and they're both attacking ghosts. Liko realizes that she needs to go in an order and figures out how Cap is moving with the Double Team. She and Roy have their Pokemon break all the Double Team in a pattern, and Sprigatito finally attacks Cap, but Cap dodges. When Cap comes down, both Sprigatito and Fuecoco are tired, so they give up, giving Captain Pikachu the win. They take a break and eat lunch there. Liko learns a bit more about Sprigatito, and she tries to figure out what Cap was teaching her. She and Roy both realize that they can't just spam moves like before. Instead, they need to look at how other Pokemon are moving and learn how to attack. So, when they have another battle, this time it's much more controlled. And eventually, Liko wins when her Sprigatito learns Quick Attack and hits Fuecoco. She celebrates her win, and both Liko and Roy thank Cap for helping them. Roy then gets a text message from Dot. Since he now had a proper battle, she tells him to come by, and when they go near her room, she sends them, through Quaxley, a piece of paper that shows Rayquaza is in Paldea, where the ship is already heading. And with that info, Roy's happy and thanks her, and the episode ends with us seeing a shadowy version of Dot and Liko wanting to know more about her. Overall, this is a fun episode. I like training episodes a lot, and this episode, like other training episode, was great. Liko and Roy both learn how to properly battle instead of just using their same type attack bonus moves over and over again, and we get to see Sprigatito learn how to use a brand new move in an awesome scene. It's also fun to find out about another secret member of the Volt Tacklers. Her being Liko and Roy's age is interesting because now this allows the dynamic of them to develop together. It'll be interesting to see how they handle this. Besides that, we're also going to Paldea soon, and I'm interested to see how Roy's story of the Rayquaza will continue while we continue Liko's story of her going to Paldea. And Liko also wanting to learn more about Dot will be interesting to watch next episode. I can't wait. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 8 of Pokemon Horizons titled The Secret Behind the Off-Limits Door just dropped, and we finally get to learn more about Dot, the secret member of the Rising Fold Tacklers. So let's talk about it. This is more of a relaxed episode as compared to usual. This episode's really focused on Dot, the other member of the Brave Asagi. The focus is not really on her as much as it is on people around her. The episode starts with Murdoch and Freed sneaking into the kitchen to see if Dot has ate the donuts that Murdoch has made. When she hasn't, Freed and Pikachu eat it afterwards. The next morning, they have to pull the ship over and delay their travel to Paldea because Freed and Murdoch have been making too many sweets and depleting their supply. We get to see that the kids have to go to school on a normal day here, which is actually a nice bit of world building. All the ship members land in the city, and Roy loses a rock, paper, scissors game to see who has to take care of the ship. However, he begs Liko to take care of the ship instead in order to tell her a secret about the professor and Murdoch storing their sweets in the cabinet. Liko is more than happy to, however, since she wants to watch the neato thing live. After she cleans up, she grabs the lunch made by Murdoch and realizes that there's one extra for Dot. She wants to learn more about Dot, so she goes over to outside her room and tries to conversate with her. At first, it's just like Murdoch says. She thinks friendships are a pain. However, it seems that Liko slowly starts getting some answers from her when she talks about the neato thing and how it inspired her. At the end though, she tells Liko to just go away, so disappointed, Liko drops the food off in front of the door and leaves to watch the live stream. There's two separate things happening here, so I'll go through them separately. First, Liko's watching the live stream of the neato thing, and as she is, Dot ends up reading Liko's question about how to make friends with someone like Dot. Liko gets so excited that the neato thing read her question that she screams, and even though Dot suspects that the question is about her, she still gives a good answer to Liko, telling her to take it like a battle and try many different approaches. Roy, who's happy to be in his first city outside of his hometown, is looking around for info on the Black Rayquaza. There's a seller trying to hustle and sell cloth, and although Roy and Free don't want to buy it, they end up doing so because the seller feigns information telling them that the explorers also recently asked him the same thing. And even though he doesn't know anything, at least they know now that the explorers are also looking for the shiny Rayquaza. Before Free and Roy can get back in the ship, Roy comes across a Spearow and battles it with Fuecoco. At first, he struggles, but once he starts watching the Spearow's attack, he's able to use Ember on it and KO it, showing that he's improved as a battler. After getting the things they came for, the Volt Tacklers head back to the ship. There in front of Dot's room, Roy tells Liko about his battle against the Spearow. Once Dot responds that they're just making too much noise, they ask her what she wants to learn about, and she says that she's looking for treasure about an ancient Pokeball and things that no one's seen before. So basically the things that Liko and Roy have. Roy leaves to try and taste the Alcreamy's cream when Liko tells him that she got hit in the face by Alcreamy, and later at night, Dot sneaks into the kitchen to try Murdoch's new donut recipe, and Murdoch and Frieda are happy. The episode ends with the Brave Asagi arriving to the shores of Paldea. This is a fun episode. It was low-key and it was about Dot, who's still a pretty strange character. However, it's fun to see her build up, and it'll be interesting to watch how she'll be utilized in the future. The shiny Rayquaza plot seems to be the main one moving forward, as the explorers are still trying to find it. I'll be interested to see what they do with the story options since they're heading to Paldea, which is a massive region with many stories you can tell. And also, how long will they be there? I'm assuming it's not going to be a journey situation where it's one and out, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 9 of Pokemon Horizons titled Arrival in Paldea just dropped, and our heroes arrive in Paldea so the Volt Tacklers can pick up their payment for being the bodyguard for Liko at her school. However, it seems like Liko's father doesn't want her to continue her adventures. Let's see how this plays out. The Brave Asagi arrives in Paldea. Liko overhears talking of this being the final time she might get to see the Volt Tacklers. When she leaves the ship, Roy wants to come to Paldea to explore, so she says yes. They get to Mesagosa and she shows him around. It looks like the anime took Narana Academy as the main academy, the Orange Academy, so the colors of all the students in this series will be orange. Afterward, Free tries to call Liko's mother, but she isn't picking up, so instead they head to Liko's house to meet where her father is. Remember, it was Liko's mom who hired the Volt Tacklers. Dot, whose neato thing costume stinks, goes outside to let her outfit dry out. While coming back in, Ludlow tells Dot that caring, when not pretending to, is like not caring at all. He's hinting at the fact that while Dot acts ambivalent towards Liko, she does really care for her. Liko's sad that she'll have to leave the Volt Tacklers here. As we get to her house, which is the protagonist's house from the game, her father's Fido welcomes her. Then, her father, Alex, comes out to introduce himself to Freed and Roy. When Roy introduces himself and Liko as a Volt Tackler, Freed changes the subject and talks about Alex's painting. When Liko heads to her room, Sprigatito, who has been upset since her Fido came out and greeted her, leaves to go to the roof of the house. As she's searching for it, she overhears her father talking about being worried about her. He wondered if she could deal with being by herself, and he was also thinking of keeping her home. If she needed to, she could commute to the school, but he wants her to not continue her adventure. As Liko's listening in on this, she bumps into the window and makes noise, giving away the fact that she was listening in to their conversation. She makes the excuse that she was searching for Sprigatito, which, while true, avoids the question of her listening in. It also seems like Sprigatito is still upset at her and refuses to go with her back to the ship. So Liko tells her dad that since he has a project to finish, she's gonna go back to the ship for the night and she'll be back in the morning. When she gets back to the ship, she says that I'm home by habit. I really like this section of the episode. It's not hard to pick up what's going on. Liko wants to stay with the Volt Tacklers and not stay home. However, it's not explicitly said by anyone here either. It's all facial reactions, music, mannerisms. I think it's wonderfully done. On the positive, it does seem like Fido and Sprigatito are getting along better. She stays in the ship overnight, not being able to sleep well, thinking it'll be her last night. When she leaves her room, she sees a drawing from Dot showing her in the ship with Sprigatito. As she walks into the kitchen where Orla and Molly are, she smells her father's coffee. When she tells him that she didn't know how much he was worried about her, they tell her that the only thing that matters is what she wants to do. As she's about to head out, she also stumbles upon Roy, who thinks that the reason Sprigatito is mad at her is because she was showing Fido so much attention and got jealous. So, with everyone's encouragement on the whole situation, Liko decides that she will tell her father that she wants to stay with the ship. She thanks Dot and tells her that she'll return and heads out to buy her father's favorite coffee. She also sees the Nidothing costume, but she has no time to think about that. As she's heading home, since Sprigatito isn't with her, she doesn't have a way to defend herself against wild Pokemon. So as she's walking home with her father's coffee and cake, she's attacked by Lechonk, who steals her bag of food. She starts chasing after it, and Sprigatito, seeing that she hasn't come back, runs to her aid. Fried, who wants to talk to Liko's father, goes to the house thinking that Liko's already there, but is surprised when he finds out she isn't there yet. Sprigatito finally gets to Liko, who's being chased and attacked by Lechonk, and tackles it, getting the food back to Liko. She then battles Lechonk, having Sprigatito use Quick Attack, which sends Lechonk packing. Back in the house, Fried tells her father all about what Liko's gone through. And I think he might have told him that he also wants Liko to stay, because he tells Fried that maybe he was just too worried about her because she was growing up so fast. Liko then comes into the house and tells her father that she wants to stay with the Rising Volt Tacklers. She was nervous at first, but just like her grandmother said, with Pokemon by her side, she can go on adventures. Her father, seeing how Liko feels, allows her to stay with the Rising Volt Tacklers and adventure to the future. And that was great. While similar to the Bianca situation in Black and White, this one was a lot more different in nature. While both were because their father were worried, Bianca's dad was a lot more forceful about not wanting Bianca to leave, while Liko here got to make her own choice, and it made it feel like she got to grow up a bit more, showing character development for her. With that being sorted, they then ask Alex about the black Rayquaza that came to Paldea, and while Alex hasn't seen it, he knows another artist, Brassius, the Artisan gym leader, who's been talking about a rare Pokemon recently. And with that information, Liko and Fried set off for the boat, as they know their next destination. They wave goodbye to Alex and Fido, and that's the end of the episode. This was a really good episode. Not a lot of actions besides a small battle, but very emotionally charged episode. We get to see not only what Alex and Liko felt about Liko's journey so far, but also we get to see that Dot really does care for Liko. And it looks like Dot will be more involved with the story going forward. I can't wait. Also, I'm starting to get a feel for what this series is going to be like. I remember when Roy's motivation first came out, people said they don't want another ghost story, and I think the writers also realized that. So it looks like his goal is actually what's going to be driving the plot forward. And unlike other Pokemon shows in the past, you're not really going to be able to predict how the show's going to go, because it's taken a more serialized approach like other anime instead of taking a Pokemon game type of approach. Usually you could predict what's happening in the anime because it followed the game so close, but here that's not going to be the case. And with our heroes finally doing stuff from Paldea, I can't wait to see how it goes. Especially with Nemona debuting next episode, the series really feels like it's picking up. I can't wait. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 10 of Pokemon Horizons titled Nemona and Brassius just dropped, and in this episode, Liko and Roy have gone to Artisan to meet with Brassius. However, when they get there, they find that the gym is closed. What has happened with Brassius? Let's find out. Continuing from last episode, Liko and Roy head to Artisan to meet Brassius and get info on the black Rayquaza. They walk around, meet the Pokemon in Paldea, when all of a sudden they see the Sunflora statue. When they look at who made them, it Turns out those statues were made by Brassius. They ask around the town about the shiny Rayquaza before they come across Nemona beating a trainer in battle. When they introduce themselves to her, she wants to battle them, but they tell her that they're looking for Brassius right now. Nemona also has some business with Brassius actually. Brassius hasn't done any gym challenges recently and she's here to find out why. So with that, they decide to go to his art studio. Also, Liko realizes Nemona for being a champion rank trainer. They hear Brassius yell something isn't avant-garde enough. This is something he'll say a lot in the episode. When they go around the corner, they see Brassius with a broken sculpture next to him. Liko then introduces herself and talks about her father, who told her about Brassius. Brassius recognizes Liko's dad Alex, so he invites them in. We see that he's made many sculptures, including Pokemon Mug. When Roy tries to bring up the subject of the shiny Rayquaza, however, Brassius gets upset and walks away, saying this isn't avant-garde. Trying to figure out what to do, Liko realizes that Brassius is probably in a slump. Since her father's also an artist, she knows what that's like, and what he would do in these types of situations is do things to make him happy. So they decide that they're going to gather all the Sunflora in the town to make Brassius happy, since there's a saying about how gathering all the Sunfloras will make people happy in Artisan. And just like in the game, they go around the town and collect a bunch of Sunfloras in the area. Even afterwards though, Brassius is in hiding and doesn't come out until his Dollop forces him out. Finally he decides to talk. Basically, he was creating a sculpture of a Sunflora looking at a shiny Rayquaza, inspired by Alex's books. However, one night when he was out, he actually saw the real shiny Rayquaza, and he felt like the Sunflora looking up at the Rayquaza. It was so intense that now, any art he makes, he doesn't think he's good enough. However, Roy doesn't see it that way. Instead, not only does he think that Brassius' Rayquaza statue is awesome, but so is the story of how he saw Rayquaza. When asked by Brassius why he's pursuing Rayquaza, Roy says that Rayquaza is his first step, and hearing that from Roy inspires Brassius, so he decides he once again wants to do gym battles, and this time the first one he wants to do is against Roy so he can test him to see if he's ready for Rayquaza. We get a gym battle here like the old times, except this isn't for the gym badge, and I'll say that's a really smart way to go about showing the stories of the game without retreading the old format of the anime. We'll still get some gym battles, but it'll be in a different context. Roy brings out his Fuecoco and Brassius brings out his Sudowoodo. Roy thinks that a Sudowoodo is a grass type, so he tries to have Fuecoco use Ember, however, that doesn't do a lot of damage. He's finally told by Nemona that Sudowoodo is a rock type, which shocks him. He then tries to get close range with Tackle, but Brassius uses Substitute, which confuses Roy and Fuecoco. He tries a bunch of times to hit it, but he keeps failing. Sudowoodo then uses Taunt to anger Fuecoco, and it works. Fuecoco starts wildly stomping around and using Ember everywhere. Roy's trying too hard to win. Brassius tells Roy that the first step in battling is to see how your Pokemon is feeling. So hearing that, Roy instead has Fuecoco channel its anger. It begins stomping all over the floor, causing massive shockwaves to go and breaks the substitute. Fuecoco has learned Stomping Tantrum. Roy has Fuecoco use it one more time before trying to get close range. However, this time, Brassius has another trick up his sleeve. He terrestrializes Sudowoodo. And while Roy thinks that gives him an advantage since it's a grass type now, Sudowoodo becomes much faster and KOs Fuecoco with Trailblaze. So even though he lost, Brassius seems happy with Roy. Also, a bunch of trainers come around and surround Brassius and all of his battle. Nemona explains terrestrialization to us at home, and there's one more thing. Brassius wants to show our heroes that when he went to the forest of Arboliva where he saw the Rayquaza, he also saw the Arboliva there shining. And he thinks that has something to do with the shiny Rayquaza. Seeing this, he created a statue of the Arboliva and he shows it to our heroes. After this, they go back to the ship and tell everyone about the events of the day. Our heroes plan on getting to the forest the next day, and Liko talks to Roy about how when she saw the statue, she felt the pain and sadness of the statue, meaning the Arboliva must be feeling that way too. However, they're not fully sure. And the episode ends with a massive Arbivola walking through the forest at night. This is a fun episode. We get to finally experience a Paldea story from the games and the anime. I love the introduction to Nemona. She's just as excited for battle here as she is in the games, but she also feels a lot more mature. I also like them immediately acknowledging that she's the champion. I know this is the type of reaction people hope that Ash would receive as well when he became champion Alola, but alas, that wasn't the case. Also, I love the fact that since Liko's from Paldea, she actually knows quite a bit about her region. She knows the Pokemon, the champion. It's strange she didn't know that Brassius was the grass gym leader, but besides that, her portrayal of this being in her own region has been great. It's so different compared to Ash, who knew nothing about Pokemon when he started his journey. I wonder if Roy will be doing the gym challenges in the future, or will it alternate between him and Liko battling different gym leaders? I feel like that would work better because the story doesn't feel the same as the old anime, especially since the gym battle isn't the focus anymore. I can't wait to find out how they go about this. And as for what's coming in the future, it'll be interesting to see how the Arbivola and Rayquaza plot continues. I think it'll have something to do with Liko's pendant as well, since he's been absent from the main plot for a while. I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. As for this episode, I liked it quite a bit. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 11 of Pokemon Horizon is titled The Arboliva's Forest just dropped, and our heroes continue to the forest where Brassius says that he saw the shiny Rayquaza. However, when they come across the forest, it is desolated. What happened here? Let's find out. This episode begins with Liko trying to confirm something. Last episode, she saw a Nidothing costume on the ship. She goes to Dot's room to confirm that Dot is Nidothing. Super fan! Yep, a super fan. That's why she has the costume. Molly's talking to her mom on her phone, who's worried about her before she hangs up. She's looking at an article on her phone about the forest that Liko and Roy are planning to investigate tomorrow to find out more about Rayquaza, and thinks that maybe she should be going along too. Next day, Nemona leads them to the forest that Brassius was talking about. However, as seen in Molly's article, the forest was recently burnt down by a wildfire due to lightning. However, Nemona says that there's more greenery deeper in the forest, and before she leaves, she tells Roy that she wants to battle him next time they meet. Liko and Roy see what Nemona was talking about when they go deeper into the forest, and Roy says that he wants to scout the forest around since he's used to being in them, and leaves, setting a giant tree that's ahead of them as the point to meet if any of them ever get lost. Molly and Liko sit down there and have a chat. This episode has a focus on the perspective of parents and children. For example, Murdoch worries about what the kids want to eat and constantly texts them. However, the kids find that kinda annoying because he's constantly asking them stuff. Similarly, we learn here that Molly comes from a line of doctor, and her family wanted her to continue that lineage. And yes, while she did enjoy the work, it isn't what she wanted to do. Liko realizes, and we get a flashback that shows us that this has been set up for a while, that she doesn't really like going around Pokemon centers. I guess she doesn't want to go back to where it reminds her of her past. She talks about how she was supposed to be a nurse, but ultimately chose not to. Why? We'll find out later in the episode. Molly says that she admires that Liko was able to talk to her father and go on her own adventure. Even though Liko doesn't know what she wants to do in her life right now, she's adventuring and finding out her own path. Sprigatito finds some oranberries around, and Molly tells Liko that she should go collect some oranberries, so Liko does. However, Liko gets lost after she does pick some oranberries, while Roy goes to the biggest tree in the forest. He wants to climb to get a good vantage point, but as he's climbing the giant tree, he notices an ancient Pokeball stuck on the tree, and then the tree begins shaking. Liko also notices this and heads towards the tree to figure out what's going on. As she's heading there, she comes across a dry, Paldean Wooper that looks really ill. She's trying to figure out how to help it when a Cacnea, Hoppip, and Shroomish arrive, knocking down Liko before using Stun Spore to fly away with the Wooper. Liko gives chase as she thinks that they're ganging up on it. Molly's getting impatient waiting around, so she also heads to the big tree, which was the designated point to go to if someone got lost. Chasing the Pokemon, Liko arrives near the giant tree as well and sees that the Pokemon were in fact trying to help it, but she can't communicate to them the fact that she wants to help Paldean Wooper. However, just then, Molly arrives, taking firm charge of the situation and working on Wooper to heal it. Here, we learn why she didn't want to continue to be a Pokemon Center nurse. She always thought about the Pokemon outside of the Pokemon Center that were hurt, the wild Pokemon. That's why she left her old profession. Just then, however, the giant tree there in front begins moving even more, and in fact, they realize quickly that it isn't a giant tree, it's a giant Arboliva. Roy gets thrown off Arboliva, who he was still hanging on to forever there, and it begins attacking them. Roy and Liko want to run, but Molly wants to stay put and help the Wooper, so Liko decides that they need to instead buy some time. Liko has Sprigatito use Quick Attack to get Arboliva's attention. Meanwhile, Fuecoco uses Stomping Tantrum to get it off balance. Then finally, Liko has Sprigatito use Quick Attack to get on top of Arboliva before using Leafish to blind it, and then one more Stomping Tantrum from Fuecoco brings it down. However, even though it went down, it's still not out, and it's even more mad now. Just then though, the banged up Paldean Wooper, who has been bandaged by Molly, arrives and yells at the Arboliva. Then, Molly comes over and says that they were trying to help the Wooper, which seems to calm down Arboliva. A bit later, it makes some distressing noise before lifting up Roy and Liko, showing them how much of the forest got destroyed by the wildfire mentioned earlier. And that is the end of the episode. So this explains the feeling that Liko had in the last episode when she said that she thought that the statue of Arboliva made by Brassius felt sad. The fire happened recently, and that's what it was sad over. However, there's still a few more questions remaining that weren't answered this episode. Why is this Arboliva so big? I'm assuming it's a Titan Pokemon, but we don't really have an answer of that. Why does it have an ancient Pokeball on it? And what's its connection to Rayquaza? All those will probably be answered in future episodes. As for this one though, I really liked that this episode was a smaller scale episode to help us give us insight into into Molly and her character. We learn about her past as a nurse, we learn a bit about her family history, and we learn why she chose to go around with the Rising Volt tacklers instead of being a Pokemon nurse. Learning all that makes your character way more interesting, and I hope we continue to get smaller scale episodes like this to learn more about the other cast characters. Also, the Nidothing plot will seemingly be a gag, where Liko just can't ever figure out that Dot is in fact a Nidothing. I wonder if she ever will. I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. As mentioned earlier, this episode was themed around the worry of a parent and a child, and this episode reinforces that by having the giant Arboliva be worried about the Wooper, only for the Wooper to reassure it. For a children's cartoon talking about the dynamic of a parent and child is really a fantastic thing for the kids of the younger demographic who are going to be watching this, because it should help them become more empathetic. And I have a feeling that next episode, that'll be reinforced even more. Overall though, for a smaller scale episode, I enjoyed it. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 12 of Pokemon Horizons titled The Future I Choose just dropped, and in this episode, the Arboliva in the forest causes a strange phenomenon to occur, causing Liko's pendant to go off. What is it? Let's find out. As Liko and Roy see the devastation caused by the wildfire before they got there, they figure out that the giant Arboliva was giving nutrients to and healing the Pokemon of the forest, but the damage to the forest is so great that it's making it hard for the Arboliva. So seeing that, Liko resolves to revive the forest for the sake of the wild Pokemon living there. She, along with Molly and Roy, work hard to gather berries, till the soil, and plant the seeds for the forest. Once they're done, the only thing they need is water. Dot is working on a video explaining Pokemon abilities, but when she goes to upload it, she sees that there's an interference in the area preventing signals from going through. That's why no one's had any signals in their phones all day. Fried, who's been worried about Liko and Roy all day, decides to go and investigate why. He eventually finds that a Magneton has been causing this interference, so he has Cap scared away. Right after he does, Liko gives him a call and he finds out what they were doing. Once he hears what they did in the forest, he then has Orla and Ludlow come with him to the forest. Why Ludlow? Well, Ludlow has just the Pokemon to help them. A Quagsire, who he has used Rain Dance to put water in the tilled land, and after doing so, Arboliva uses his ability Seed Sower to help restore the forest. As they're admiring the regrown forest, Liko's pendant begins to glow. The pendant turns into the baby Terrapagos Pokemon that we've seen before, and then the giant Arboliva gets an energy ball and lays it on top of Liko and Roy and the baby Terrapagos. Inside, they see a vision of a man telling what it looks like Arboliva, "I want you to find the world's something," before the pendant returns and they're back to the regular world. Once that occurs, the Arboliva returns back to the ancient Pokeball. They try to recall it, but no avail. However, Fried tells Roy that maybe they should keep it because it seemed like Arboliva was happy with them. However, all of this is being currently watched by Spinal. Remember, Spinal's the guy who got the mission to get Liko's pendant once the mission got taken away from Ametheo. Later in the day, in the library, Fried is trying to find out more information on the pendant, the ancient Pokemon, anything he can find. However, he can't find anything and he's frustrated. That's when he comes across Lucia, Liko's mother. Due to Liko's grandmother, she thought that contact with Fried over the phone would be risky. We then learn in a unique way here when we cut between the conversation that Lucia and Fried are having and the book that Roy is reading about the ancient adventurer given to Roy by Liko's father. We find out here that the ancient Pokeball Roy has for the Rayquaza and now the Arboliva belonged to the ancient adventurer Lucius. Lucius, with his black Rayquaza, went on an adventure and befriended a bunch of friends until they got to paradise. And in reading the story in the book, it means that 2 of the ancient Pokeball they have are 2 of the 6 Pokemon of this adventurer. There's still 4 more Pokemon of his around. As far as the connection with the pendant, even Liko's mother doesn't know what it is since the pendant belongs to Liko's grandmother, and she resides in an old castle in Galar currently. When Liko asks her father about the story though, he says it's fiction, although Roy still thinks there's some truth to that since they've met the Rayquaza and the Arboliva, which matches the story, and the person they saw in the vision tried to say something to them, which could be the adventurer. Hearing that the pendant resonated with the ball and near Liko makes Lucia change her mind about getting the pendant back from Liko. Instead, she wants her to figure out her own path in life and learn on her own. Also, it's implied here that Lucia was also the teacher to Fried, which means he's super young, maybe like 18, 19, 20 years old. Back at the ship, Fried tells everyone what's up with all the information he's learned from Liko's mother, and he wants Liko to decide what she wants to do next. Liko says that she wants to meet her grandmother again, who's an adventurer who could be anyone. anywhere. But since Freed knows where they're going, our heroes get ready to set off for the Galar region. However, before the end of the episode, we see that Spinal has been using his Behem to watch everything about our heroes, and now he's going to be making his move on Liko's pendant. This episode was really split up into two halves. The first half was wrapping up the story of Paldea with the Arbalova, and second was introducing more information about the pendant, the ancient adventurer, and setting up the antagonist for the second part of the story. I'm interested to see how the story progresses in Galar. Will we finally get a chance to meet the characters we never got to in Ash's version of the story, like Nessa, Kabu? I can't wait to see. This episode leaves a lot of questions, particularly regarding the ancient adventurers and his heroes, which are his Pokemon. Who are all the Pokemon? Where's this paradise that this adventurer went to? Is it Area Zero like in the games? Also, why is Liko's grandmother so secretive, and why is Liko's grandmother causing Liko's mother to not even be able to contact Freed? Why is it so risky? What is she up to? Does Lucia know that Liko's being hunted by other people? She seems to know that the pendant carries at least some risks with it since he was willing to grab it back, yet she's letting things play out here. What's the reason? So many questions, and it looks like the story is progressing in a brisk fashion, so I can't wait to see where it goes next. As for this episode, while it's a lot more laid back, I think the exposition really helps keep this episode interesting, and overall, I'd say I enjoyed it. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, after 2 weeks, we are finally back in Pokemon Horizons, episode 13, and this one is titled A Sudden Picnic. This is the first real filler episode of the series, and while the episode itself is fine, the production of this episode is worrying, so let's talk about it. This episode begins with the ship not heading to Galar. Instead, the fin alignment of the ship is off, so the ship needs to run an automated check. We also learn here that Orla actually built this ship from the ground up. This used to actually just be a fishing boat for Ludlow until Frida asked Orla to make this thing fly. The recalibrating will take about half a day, so instead, Freed decides that they should have a picnic. The picnic itself is nothing crazy. They make sandwiches which reflect their personality. Freed is eating an all-meat sandwich, which raises a lot of questions about the ethics and which Pokemon he's eating. Liko has a plain sandwich, Roy has a sandwich with almost too much things. They enjoy the food, and Liko reflects on her journey so far. She thinks about everyone in the Rising Voltaclers and how they're her friends now. This is where the production issues that I was talking about start shining through. The blatant use of footage from the first couple of episodes this early into the series is not a good sign. Neither is the fact that this episode 13 required 13 animation directors to not make it fall apart. And besides the incredibly short upcoming fight between Fuecoco and Wattrel, this episode didn't even have anything that crazy. I don't even know what needed that much support in order to be built, but whatever it was, that has me really worried for the future of this series. Roy wants to take a picture with Liko, the sandwich, and their Pokemon to send to Dot, who's staying behind in the ship along with Ludlow. Liko thinks about how much it sucks that Dot isn't experiencing this picnic, so she asks Murdoch to help her with something. Meanwhile, Roy's chasing a Wattrel because it stole his and Fuecoco's sandwich. Roy chases it to the end of the cliff, but it doesn't fly off. Wattrel then gets ready to battle and dodges a stomping tantrum before screaming with Growl. Roy gets both Fuecoco and Wattrel to stop screaming at each other and shares the sandwich with it. However, once it eats its own, it also takes Fuecoco's part. As Roy and Fuecoco are walking away though, he notices a flock of Wattrel flying away except the one he just fought. First of all, was that just me or did that stomping tantrum look like Rock Throw? Wattrel's a flying type Pokemon, so it's not like it would have gotten hit by stomping tantrum anyways, so unless it was showing us that, did Fuecoco learn a new move off camera? Dot is in the ship as a Nidothing, trying to make a video about picnics but can't because she's never really experienced one. That's when she gets a text from Liko telling her that she's made sandwiches for her in the kitchen. When Dot gets there though, the sandwiches aren't there, just the ingredient. Dot is wondering about this when Ludlow explains to her that picnics aren't just about going outside, they're about sharing experiences with the people you love and your Pokemon, and Liko is trying to share the experience of the picnic with Dot. Dot appreciates that and smiles. She even sends Liko a picture of her enjoying the food with the Nidothing suit on with Ludlow. Liko's happy and thinks she's sending a picture of her in her Nidothing costume, and it's a sign that their friendship is getting closer. She still doesn't know that she's Nidothing yet. Finally, the picnic ends, and so as they're about to head back, Roy can't stop thinking about the Wattrel, so he goes back to the cliff. Back in the ship, they're ready to fly away, but the recalibrating that was supposed to have happened has not continued. This is due to Spinal and all of his Magneton that are causing interference in the air, and the episode ends on the question, will the ship be able to fly again? So like I said earlier, the episode itself is fine, it's nothing special, it's not really even worth talking about. However, I really am worried about the production of the series. There was a lot of still frames in this episode, very little movement, and the episode still required 13 animation directors. To give you an example, in a typical episode, if the production isn't falling apart like it is here, an episode will have maybe 1, maybe 2 animation directors at the most. 13 tells you that there's a massive issue going on, and I really hope they can solve it soon. The main reason usually for these production issues are time. The production studios and the animators just don't have enough time to work on these episodes. That's why they already took a 2-week break 12 episodes into the series. In a well-maintained long-running series, that would never be an issue. For me, if they need to take more 2-week breaks to give the animators more breathing room, I hope they do that. I don't want to see production fall apart for the series like it did for Pokemon Journeys. As for the episode itself, the 2 main things are the story of Roy and Wattrel, and Spinal finally making a move. I guess we'll have to see where both of these stories go. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 14 of Pokemon Horizons titled Fly Wattrel just dropped, and this episode ramps up the drama to both Liko's plot and advances Roy's character. How does it do that? Let's talk about it. This episode has 2 separate stories going on, so let's start first with Roy's story. At the end of last episode, Roy and Fuecoco return to find the Wattrel they met earlier. It runs away from them at first, especially since they're being chased by a Vespiquen, but eventually calms down once Roy gives it an Oranberry. They learn that the Wattrel can't fly. It also seems to have a fear of heights, which if you're a bird is not ideal, so Roy decides to help it fly again. At first, he wants it to jump small distances to the water, but it's too terrified to, so instead, Roy collects some soft grass and lays it below a small rock. Roy shows that it's not that bad to jump on, so after concentrating hard, the Wattrel is finally able to jump on the hay. However, it still struggles to jump to the water. It's evening time, so they have to return to the ship for the night. However, overnight, Roy thinks about how he can help the Wattrel when Lidlo arrives behind him and Roy gets an idea. The next morning during breakfast, we see that he built a small rope contraption, a safety harness with Ludlo's fishing rod that can hold up Wattrel while it learns to fly. So he goes back to where Wattrel is and has it put on this contraption. As he's holding it up in the air and gives it some momentum, the Wattrel flaps its wing as hard as it can, and so hard that electricity breaks the contraption and it begins flying, albeit with not much balance, and help with a gust of wind gets it up in the air and flies away to the tower with the other Wattrel. Even Murdoch, who saw it from a distance, comes in and congratulates Roy on his training working. As he's about to head back to the ship, Wattrel sees Roy walking away and flies towards him. Murdoch gives him a Pokeball, and even though a gust of wind sends it off course, Roy is able to curve the Pokeball and hit it, allowing him to capture it. That means Roy has finally got his second Pokemon in the party, Wattrel. This is a nice moment for Roy as we see the type of trainer and person he is. And him helping this Pokemon out that he didn't really necessarily need to ends with him getting rewarded with that Pokemon's friendship. I like that unlike Ash, we see that Roy is still a kid. Even though he's thankful that he helped the Pokemon, he's still sad. And you can interpret it either way. You can say he's sad because he won't see Wattrel again, which is the Ash thing, or he's sad that he didn't get to capture Wattrel because he does tell Murdoch that even though he should be happy, he doesn't feel so happy. And I like that. The episode keeps it ambiguous as to what the reason is, and it makes him feel more like a real kid. He's not just this perfect I can help Pokemon and then walk away type person. He kind of expects to be rewarded, and I really like that. And now to the more drama-filled part of the episode. Since last episode ended with Spinel stopping the reboot of the Brave Asagi via his Magneton, this episode begins with Dot trying to figure out why, but she can't. That's when Fried hears the ship's Noctowl and goes outside, seeing that there's a collection of Magnetons specifically stopping the networks on their ship. He thinks that the way they're moving, they aren't wild, so he follows one of the Magneton from near the airship and starts chasing it. Meanwhile, Murdoch and Liko go shopping, and while doing so, Murdoch tells Liko that he appreciates that Liko is Dot's friend. Liko also says that Dot helped her give her the courage to tell her father that she wanted to be a Volt Tackler, and afterwards they go shopping. It's cute, and they get ice cream together, and as they're returning, Murdoch mentions that he couldn't find the specific spice he was looking for, but oh well. And that seems all fine and dandy, except we also find out that they're being followed by a Behemoth. Fried follows that Magneton to Lavencia into an alleyway, and he's ambushed by both the Magneton and the Behemoth that we see from earlier that followed Liko and Murdoch. It traps Charizard with Psychic while Magneton hits it with multiple Zap Cannon and paralyzes it. The Pokemon are, by the way, Spinel's Pokemon, and they have a small microphone on their collar so he can command them remotely. And after trapping Charizard with Psychic, he wants Behemoth to use Meteor Beam. So in order to dodge, Freed pulls out his trump card and terrestrializes Charizard, turning it into a dark type. It's able to now completely resist the Psychic and use Terra Blast to heavily damage the Beheeyem. However, before he can get any answers as to what happened, Beheeyem and Magneton teleport away to Spinel's lab. With now seeing Freed's strength and knowing more about Liko, Spinel begins his action. The morning where Roy's using the fishing rod to help Wattrel, he sends a notification to Liko's phone saying that the spice that Murdoch was looking for is available now, but only in limited quantity and only in specific areas. This kinda shows how naive Liko is, because who would believe that? Anyways, she heads off to Lavencia by herself. When she gets to where the location on her phone tells her, it's a dead end. That's when Spinel bumps into her. As she's on the floor getting ready to pick up her phone, she's hypnotized by Beheeyem, and Spinel walks away with her pendant in hand, with Liko not remembering anything. And that's where we end the episode. The way Spinel moves is genuinely creepy and well done. He's shown as this extremely calculating guy who looks at all possible options before working on a plan. He's very different from Amethio, who goes headfirst into anything. The whole section of him disabling this ship, following our heroes to learn more about them, and then finally striking shows how cunning and manipulative he can be. I'm interested in seeing how they deal with him compared to Amethio. We still don't know what the explorers want with their pendant, so now with it being in their possession, I hope we find out soon. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 15 of Pokemon Horizons titled Someone We Can't See. Who's a What's It just dropped. Liko can't remember why she's in Paldea after her pendant was stolen and she was hypnotized by the Beheeyem. Will she be able to regain her memories? Let's find out. The Rising Voltaclers are worried because Liko hasn't come back yet, and they're supposed to be leaving to go to Galar soon. They end up checking Cortisone City first because Dot sees that there's been a lot of sightings of her there. However, when the Voltaclers arrive there and search for her, they don't find anything. That's when they realize that the info was probably fake and that the explorers were going after Liko's pendant. So now they need to be aware of an enemy that's most likely laying a trap for them. Dot also realizes that they've been duped here. This false info war is exactly what Spinel wanted, as his BM is watching the Voltaclers in Cortisone City. While they're discussing this, Roy chases after his Wattrel, who's chasing after a Corvus Squire, and he ends up in Lavencia City. Meanwhile in Lavencia, Liko's still walking around trying to figure out why she's in Paldea. She doesn't even recognize the ancient Pokeball that she got from Arbalava a few episodes ago. When she tries to go home though, her Sprigatito runs around the city and eventually leads her close to a body of water, triggering a memory for her of her and Fuecoco in the ship watching the sunset near a body of water. It's still fuzzy though. Dot, being duped by the fake alerts, tries to figure out a way to find Liko. That's when she comes up with an idea. She calls the Lavencia gym leader Iono. She tells her that she's looking for an IRL friend and she has an idea to find her. What is that? Well, they're gonna do a collab stream as Nidothing and Iono and create a game similar to the gym puzzle in the game where you play hide and seek and find people. Liko's in the crowd seeing this take place, and who are they looking for in this game of hide and seek? Liko herself, of course. Liko is immediately found in the crowd, so instead it turns into a game of tag. With Dot now knowing that Liko is in Lavencia, she leaves the stream and lets the rest of the Rising Voltaclers know as well. She confirms that the enemy is feeding them fake information, and when Freed's about to go look for Liko, Dot asks to join him. When he arrives to pick her up, she's ready to go, but she needs to take a Pokemon with her, and that Pokemon is her Quaxly. When Liko's being chased around by Iono fans, Roy's lost in the city. However, Freed finds him and brings Dot to him. He immediately recognizes Dot even though he's never seen her because of her Quaxly, and they begin looking for Liko from the ground while Freed looks for her from the sky. As Liko's running away from the fans, she's gaining more and more of her memory back because she's done this before with Sprigatito. She's ran away from people, and when she gets to the top of a building, she sees the moon and realizes her and Sprigatito are working together to forge their own path to the future. That's when she remembers everything. As she's about to jump from one building to another just like before, Roy and Dot spot her. She thinks about everything she holds dear to her, including her friends, the Rising Voltaclers, giving her the courage to jump to where they're at. She doesn't immediately recognize Dot, which you can say that it was either the memory issues or her obliviousness to anything regarding Dot. However, it does provide a small bit of difference between Roy and Liko, where Roy recognizes people for their character much more than Liko. I think that's pretty interesting. But regardless, she gets a confirmation from Dot herself that they're friends. However, the game is still going on, so Iono wraps this up. She chooses Roy as the person who found Liko, and Dot as Nidothing, thanks to Fan wrapping up the stream. Fried also arrives afterwards, and that's when she realizes that her pendant was stolen. She vaguely remembers bumping into someone and coming across a Behem. However, the fact that the person who stole the pendant is still around causing them issue means that they haven't been able to leave yet for whatever reason, meaning now the Rising Bolt tacklers will begin their counterattack. And with that plan being set, that is the end of the episode. I really like this episode. Let's start with Iona. From the moment she was introduced, I knew that she would be a fantastic anime character, and I'm glad to see that I wasn't wrong in this case. She is super energetic and memorable, while also not being so annoying that you don't like her. She's done really well in this episode. I also like Dot's progression here. She's slowly been coming around to Liko, but in this episode, it cements her friendship fully with her. And now, this allows the writers to bring her into more settings than just the ship itself. That makes me excited because now we can have a third character and potentially see more progression for her too. This episode is also great because it reinforces Liko's morals and ideas and allows her to meet Dot in an organic fashion. It also shows us how sneaky the opponents that our heroes are facing are. He has stifled them at almost every turn, but the end of this episode makes it a turning point where our heroes now will go on the offensive, and that is exciting. I can't wait to see how they go about this. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 16 of Pokemon Horizon is titled As Long As I'm With Quaxly just dropped, and we have an incredible episode here which I'm so excited to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. This episode continues directly from the end of the last one, as our heroes have decided to get back Liko's pendant. However, before they can do that, Fried gives Dot a Pokeball because she actually hasn't caught her Quaxly, which is surprising. After she does capture it, Fried flies away in his Charizard to find the enemy. However, it isn't until a billboard in Lavencia tips them off to the idea that the enemy might be in a cruise, which is why they were forced to stick around even after taking the pendant, that our heroes have an idea and begin to go towards the dock. Liko also lets Fried know by calling him. Liko, Roy, and Dot make it to the dock a bit too late. However, Fried and his Charizard flies towards the ship and looks for someone and initiates a battle with the trainer who he thinks is the enemy. In the mainland, Liko is explaining the pendant to Dot when all of a sudden the ancient Pokeball that Liko has begins glowing, and that lets them know that the pendant is still around here. So they split up and Dot goes towards the ship when her Quaxly goes there when she comes across the Magneton and Behem of Spinel. The Behem tries to hypnotize and wipe Dot's memory, but Quaxly stops it. Dot, knowing that this is the enemy, has Quaxly use Water Gun in the air to send out a signal to Liko and Roy, who are nearby. Quaxly then gets hit by Electro Ball, and when it's about to get hit by another one, Liko and Roy, who barely made it to the ship that was moving, show up and stop it. This is where we get some incredible animation. Our three heroes work together in an epic battle to take down the Magneton and Behem in a battle sequence that, like I said, looks phenomenal. However, Spinel then brings out his ace, his Umbreon. A snarl from the Umbreon sends all three of our heroes to the ground. However, just then, Liko, saying that she will protect the pendant, somehow gets her will to activate because the pendant starts glowing like crazy. Seeing this, Sprigatito and Liko run towards the pendant. When Spinel leaves his computer base, the pendant's energy is so vast that it flies out of the box that it's been kept in. Sprigatito is able to grab it and hand it back to Liko. When Liko has it back, a massive beam of light envelops her. Turns out that light is the ancient Pokeball with the help of the pendant and the giant Arboliva that they met a few episodes ago coming out of its Pokeball. The giant Arboliva glares at Spinel and Umbreon, forcing them to retreat, and our heroes leave the ship, floating on Arboliva. They then meet back up with Fried, who then later picks him up. Back in the ship, Liko's outside the ship thinking about all the troubles her pendant has caused her friends when Dot arrives. Even though she doesn't want to, Quaxly yells at her, so Dot tells Liko how much she appreciates saving her, and then she drops a bomb on her that she is indeed Nidothing. Liko is shocked. Finally, we go back to the Explorer's meeting room where we meet the three other Explorer admins, Onyx, Agate, and Sango. And this introduction is brief, but we do learn after the meeting ends that Spinel will be returning as a character because now he's more interested in the pendant, and he also didn't write everything that he saw in his report to the Explorers, and that creates for an interesting dynamic, as that is the end of the episode. This episode was probably the best episode of the series so far. There were a lot of things that I skipped over because so many cool things happened here. I skipped over the full battle itself that our heroes had. Not only does it set up future stories here by showing that Roy still has a long way to go as a trainer as his Pokemon can't work together, but for the first time in the series, it finally feels like Liko is the main character as she's the one who takes charge throughout the whole fight. I also like that this is one of the first time where it's the kids taking over and completing a fight on their own. All the conflicts in the past have had the grown-ups from the Voltaclers involved. However, here, they're all set to the side, which really allows our three heroes to shine in a meaningful way. And the ending to the fight with Spinel being the reawakening of the ancient Pokeball makes for an interesting plot point, because what could we potentially see in the future in terms of the Pokemon that Liko might have? Also, does this mean that Liko will have all the Pokemon from the ancient traveler and that will be her team? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Let's talk about Dot now. Dot is an interesting character to me. She's been around as long as Liko has. In fact, she's one of the first characters we see in this series besides Liko herself. However, that's more a Nido thing. But the interesting thing to me about Dot barely catching Quaxly now is what it says about the difference in how she was or is shown versus how she really is. When we first found out that Dot was Nido thing, we're led to believe that she's a super experienced trainer. Based on how she spoke about everything in the Nido thing video, that wouldn't be hard to believe. However, here, we learned that she's never even caught her partner Pokemon. It seems like this is her first Pokemon trainer battle, and it brings up an interesting dynamic into how much does she really know in terms of intelligence versus how much of it is applied learning. I know that a lot of her early knowledge from the Nido thing videos were because it was supposed to be a guide for the new anime watchers. However, with her now being revealed as a Nido thing to Liko, I'll be interested to see where the character goes from here. And like Horizons has been doing before, it does a fantastic job of transitioning to the next part of the story. Not only do we see more members of the Explorers to get an idea of the enemies of the future, but also the episode contains the next challenge for our heroes, that being Roy trying to get his Pokemon to work together in battle. I cannot wait for the next few episodes. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 17 of Pokemon Horizons titled Wattrel and Fuecoco. Secret Training just dropped, and this episode focuses on Roy's Pokemon as he tries to get them to be friends. Let's see how he goes about it. This episode begins with Liko pacing back and forth outside of Dot's room after finding out that she is Nido thing. She is still nervous even though she's known her. However, the focus here is really on Roy and his Pokemon. Wattrel and Fuecoco aren't getting along. Anytime Wattrel is trying to do something, Fuecoco somehow annoys it. For example, Wattrel's just trying to bask in the sun, but Fuecoco keeps blocking it. Fuecoco and Roy are singing, but that annoys Wattrel. Even when trying to eat, Wattrel just wants to be left alone, so they're constantly fighting. However, as Roy is calming them down, he sees Cap and Freed's Charizard battling each other. Freed tells Roy that battling can deepen bonds and relieve stress, so he gets an idea. He wants Wattrel and Fuecoco to take on Cap. It's a fun battle here. For the most part, it's Cap dodging all of Wattrel and Fuecoco's move until the very end, where it causes them to collide with each other to get the victory that way. Everyone goes inside when Freed gets a message from Dot that there's about to be some pretty rough turbulence coming up. However, Roy stays outside with his Pokemon, so when the wind starts to get strong, he and his Pokemon have to head back. His Wattrel, though, gets flung by the super strong wind, but it's able to fly back into the ship and Roy goes over to grab it. Liko comes out to try to get Roy to come in the ship when they see some tree branches in the air about to hit Roy. That's when Wattrel lets the wind carry him and smashes the branches into pieces with Spark. Once inside, Roy tries to figure out how he can have Wattrel use Spark like that. He goes to ask Dot, and she tells him that since Wattrel's wing is what creates electricity, having it be able to jump from some height would allow it to use a stronger version of Spark. That's when Roy gets an idea and goes to do some super secret training. He tells his plans to his Pokemon, who at first don't want to do it, but eventually agree to work together to do so. He begins training and even trains through his dinner. Liko has to bring him his food, and while he doesn't tell her what his strategy is, he does tell her to look forward to the next day as he's planning on rematching Cap. The next day arrives and Roy once again challenges Cap. So what's Roy's strategy? He has Wattrel and Fuecoco on top of each other and then them on top of his head. He then flings them up in the air. Wattrel jumps off Fuecoco once Fuecoco jumps to its apex and begins flying even higher. Meanwhile, Fuecoco uses Ember to force Cap to jump in the air. Then, from behind while Cap is in the air, Wattrel comes flying in with a super powerful Spark. Cap responds with a Thunder Punch, and the clash is so powerful that it makes Cap's hat go flying. Fuecoco then goes for a tackle, but Cap dodges mid-air, which sends Fuecoco to the ground, along with Wattrel, with both of them being KO'd. Sometimes the logic in the Pokemon anime battles don't make sense. In this case, a missing tackle caused Fuecoco to faint. Regardless, it was a big deal that Roy was able to get a hit in because it caused Cap to go serious for a bit. And this also seems to have solved the camaraderie issues between the two Pokemon, as now when singing with Roy and now Fuecoco, Wattrel joins in. Roy notices that Cap flew in mid-air, which is interesting because the episode ends with Cap training and looking like it's about to go flying. It looks like we're getting ready to learn a bit more about Cap's history. Overall, this was a good episode. I wish the battles were a bit better, but I can understand why they aren't. We're seeing all small bits of progression between Roy and Liko, so Roy's battles right now can't be insane. It's the same reason why, as they talk about in this episode, Liko still hasn't caught a second Pokemon yet. Since she's a new trainer, it has to be a slow ascent for her. It's realistic, but it does feel strange because in episode 3 of the original anime, Ash had already caught his second Pokemon, and by episode 6, he had his first major gym battle. So far, we've only had one major fight from the kids, which was great, but they didn't even fight that one individually. That was all 3 of them. The characters haven't had their own awesome battles yet, singles wise, so I hope that happens in the future. With that being said, like in any previous Pokemon series, episodes where training happens can be some of my favorite episodes in this series. In this case though, the training isn't shown, which is unfortunate, but the episode is still a fun watch as Roy figures out how to use his Pokemon better. Cap's strength also seems to be very random. At certain times it can just one-shot things, and other times it can't. However, I think it does show that it's an incredibly strong Pokemon. Watching this episode, by the way, made me even more upset about Trip beating Pikachu because of what Cap did in this 2v1. That's what Pikachu should have done to Trip Snivy too, but that's a story for another day. Overall, a fun episode, and I can't wait to learn more about Cap's history next episode. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 18 of Pokemon Horizons titled The Sky's the Limit for Flying Pikachu just dropped, and this episode is one of the best episodes of the series so far. Here we learn about Captain Pikachu and the history of the Brave Asagi, so let's talk about it. Last episode, when Roy faced off against Captain Pikachu, Pikachu was able to dodge mid-air against Fuecoco's tackle. So Roy is talking with Liko and Dot to try and figure out why and how he was able to do that. The conversation naturally leads to Captain Pikachu and how he became a captain. So our heroes decide that they want to record a video to learn about Captain Pikachu. Liko and Roy apparently have a channel called the Liko Roy channel, which is adorable, where they're trying to record the video. They try to ask Freed about Captain Pikachu first, but he's coy about it and doesn't answer. So they try going to the other members of the ship, in Molly and Murdoch, who only know that Cap rarely gets hurt and he isn't a picky eater. The first person to really give them any real info is Ludlow, who tells them that without Cap, the Brave Asagi and the Rising Bolt Tacklers wouldn't have been a thing. When they go ask Orla, she lets on that she knows this story since she was one of the first members of the Brave Asagi and a childhood friend of Freed's. But she wants everyone else to know the story too, so she calls everyone into the meeting room to learn about how Freed and Cap met. And even though Freed is reluctant at first, he eventually begins to tell the story. Freed was originally from Kanto and he was a genius professor, but at some point he had quit being a professor in a lab and just started hanging out with Ludlow and fishing all day. That's because he felt like he knew everything there was to know about Pokemon and was feeling lost about what he wanted to do. That's when one day, out of the blue, Liko's mom Lucia called him up. She was his teacher in Kanto, but she had moved to Paldea after getting married and was now a mother. She was also curious as to why Freed had quit being a professor, and when he explains to her why, she tells him to meet someone the next morning. Before the crack of dawn the next day, he arrives at a hill where Lucia shows him a Pikachu. While at first he isn't interested since he feels like he knows everything about Pikachu, he's shocked when the Pikachu ends up super high in the air and is using his tail to slowly descend, almost like he's flying. She explains to him that he is famous around those parts as Flying Pikachu, which Freed had never seen or heard of, so it gets him fired up to research this Pokemon. Freed and Pikachu don't get along at first. However, Freed is persistent and slowly gains the trust of Pikachu by doing things like bringing him food. We see that later he has figured out how Pikachu flies. He's using Volt Tackle to generate electric current and then uses those along with jumping from his tail to get super high in the air. Then, when in the air, he uses his tail almost as a propeller to hover and allow him to fly. However, this is also when he realizes he doesn't know as much as he thought he did. He doesn't understand why this Pikachu trains so hard for the ability to fly. Eventually, Freed decides that he won't learn anything by observing. He needs to get into it and try to understand Pikachu, so he uses his Charizard to go flying in the sky, the same time Pikachu begins to use Volt Tackle to sky. We get this phenomenal animation of Charizard flying towards and then pulling straight up to the sky. When they reach the peak, he sees that he's higher than almost a morning sunset and sees a a phenomenal view. He realizes that view and the feeling that it provides is why Pikachu is trying so hard to fly. However, Pikachu loses his balance in the air and goes crashing down to the ground, only for Charizard and Freed to save him. Freed jumps down to the ground and thanks Pikachu. It showed him a horizon, hence the title of the show, that Freed had never seen before. He realized that the world is vast, so he wants Pikachu to join him and learn about this vast world, reigniting his passion again. Pikachu agrees, so he captures Pikachu. Then, he asks Ludlow if he could use his regular fishing boat and calls Orla, his childhood friend, who he thinks is the best mechanic in the world, to turn this regular fishing boat into an airship. Even though that sounds crazy, she says she'll try and eventually creates the ship we know today. The boat was originally called the Asagi, but after Orla's modification, Freed thinks it looks brave, so it decides to call it the Brave Asagi. After creating the ship, Orla doesn't really want payment for the ship. Rather, she's also bored with her job, so she wants to join him on his adventure. And when she asks if he'll be the captain of the ship, he says that he wants it to be Pikachu. Pikachu, using his Volt Tackle to fly, is also why the team is called the Rising Volt Tacklers. So with Ludlow, Orla, Freed, and now Captain Pikachu, the Brave Asagi took off and became what it became today. Both Murdoch and Molly also didn't know the story, so they're also impressed with the story. Liko is however shocked. Her mom was Freed's teacher? He says that without Liko's mom, he wouldn't have ever met Cap, so he owes her. This to me explains why Liko was able to join the Volt Tacklers so easily. The kids decide that even though they have footage of Cap's story, they won't release it to the public. This is also when Liko decides that the next time she sees her mother, she'll be telling her about her Sprigatito. The episode then comes to an end as the ship begins to arrive near the Galar region. This episode was fantastic. It gave us a great background story into Cap, Freed, and Orla, as well as the Brave Asagi, while tying in Lucia's relationship with Freed and how it ties together as a whole. It showed us the motivation behind and how the Volt Tacklers came to be. It does a lot to explain many portions of the show too, including the title of the series. I also love the visual in this episode. I'm not sure who the animation director was or the storyboard artist was for this episode, but we got some gorgeous colors and shots all throughout this episode. I was telling someone this earlier, but this series seems to be, production-wise, in a much healthier state than Pokemon Journeys was. And the fruits of that are in episodes like this, where almost everything comes together to make a phenomenal episode. There are still a lot of questions the series needs to have answered, mainly regarding the first episode and Liko's grandmother. Things like, how did the explorers know about the pendant? Why did Liko's mom send the Brave Asagi to pick up Liko from school? Did she know that the explorers were coming after the pendant? If so, how? What's her relationship with them? And Liko's grandmother has also been shrouded in mystery this entire series, which is why they're heading to Galar. What does she know? I can't wait to see where the entire story goes. But as for this episode, this is one you guys shouldn't miss. Go ahead and check it out. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 19 of Pokemon Horizon is titled The Truth About Alcremie just dropped, and in this episode, we get the backstory behind Murdoch's Alcremie as our heroes arrive at the Galar region. What truths do they find out? Let's talk about it. The Volt Tacklers arrive in Galar. They decide that instead of taking the Brave Asagi to where Liko's grandmother is, they're going to take the Galar train since they don't want the explorers tracking the Asagi and bringing them towards Liko's grandmother. However, the train is out of service today, so they can't really go today. Everyone has something they want to do. Orla's deciding to find parts for the ship, Molly's about to go brush the Pokemon in the ship, so our heroes decide to go shopping with Murdoch to Motostoke. That way, Roy can also ask the locals about Rayquaza. Before they go, Dot also asks them to go to the Battle Cafe to bring them some Slurpuff-shaped cotton candy for her video as Nidothing. They go shopping with Murdoch, and Roy asks the locals about Rayquaza, and although he doesn't get any concrete information, he does learn that the gym leader, Kabu, is from Hoenn, so he might know. They then head to the Battle Cafe to get the Slurpuff cotton candy, however, they can't find it on the menu. That's when they see in the middle of the restaurant the chef battling a customer, and when the customer wins, he wins the cotton candy. It seems like that's the only way to get that specific cotton candy that Dot wants. However, more strangely, it seems that Murdoch knows this person, and they seem to have some kind of history. When Murdoch's Alcremie seems to know the chef and offers it cream, the chef walks away. The chef even says he won't battle Murdoch. So what has happened here? Liko prods, and Murdoch finally starts telling the story. Him and the chef, whose name is Mitchell, used to run a sweets store together. They were friendly rivals. They used to have Milcery provide the cream, and Murdoch used to make sweets that were strawberry ruby pastry, and Mitchell used to make matcha pastries. Both were equally popular. Then, one day, the Milcery that they always used for cream evolved when it grabbed a strawberry and started twirling around. It evolved into the strawberry ruby al creamy, and while Murdoch was happy it happened, Mitchell was not, and that's because the cream that Ruby Swirl Al Creamy made fit better with Murdoch's pastries. It made Murdoch's sweet really popular, much more than the matcha one. Then one day when cleaning up the shop, Mitchell blew up on Al Creamy by slapping its sweet away. That's what killed the relationship, as Murdoch and Al Creamy left the cafe forever. It's been years now, and Murdoch now understands why Mitchell wasn't happy. He was hoping that Milcery would evolve into a matcha cream one. However, they've been apart for so long that Murdoch doesn't even know what to say to him anymore. He says that these are the types of things that he thinks about that keeps him awake. Hearing the situation, and also seeing how sad Al Creamy is over this entire situation, as well as Murdoch, Liko decides that she wants to do something. She tells Murdoch that they will go ask him for a double battle. They go in and beg him, and Mitchell eventually gives in, saying, "How could I say no to a plea from a lady?" However, he says that he is strong. They go outside and it's a 2-on-2 battle, Liko and Murdoch with Sprigatito and Al Creamy, and Mitchell with the Spurpuff and Appleton. Mitchell starts the battle with a cotton spore to slow down Sprigatito and goes for apple acid on Al Creamy. However, Al Creamy uses acid armor to take the hit as well as remove the cotton spore from Sprigatito. Murdoch then has Al Creamy use Decorate on Sprigatito to increase its attacking potential. Liko then has Sprigatito use Scratch to send the other two Pokemon to the ground. Mitchell then responds with another cotton spore and apple acid, but this time in a mixing bowl. Murdoch then gets fired up and he does the same. The two chefs begin whipping up sweets, and the Pokemon battle turns into a sweet making battle. Murdoch then has Liko decorate his sweets by having Sprigatito use leafage on the cake. Both guys make sweets, and when people try it, everyone loves it. The battle ends in a draw as both guys are exhausted from just making so many sweets and they don't know what happened to the battle for the cotton candy. However, Liko's fine with what happened because Al Creamy's happy now. She realized that Al Creamy wanted to make sweets with both chefs like the whole time. Seeing this, Murdoch apologized to Mitchell for not understanding his feelings back then. However, Mitchell then walks back to the store, only to bring out another matcha cake. He tells Murdoch that this is a secret recipe cake in his store and it feels incomplete. He wants the Ruby Swirl Al Creamy to help him complete it. Mitchell says that a lot of why Al Creamy's cream didn't go with his pastries in the past was because of his own lack of skill. He envied Murdoch and he apologized for hurting both Murdoch and Al Creamy. He says he wants to put it behind them in the past and be friends again, and of course Murdoch agrees. He also tries the sweet that Mitchell made and says it's delicious, and he could tell that it was made by someone who loves sweet. Both men hug and cry. There's a nice lesson here from Liko when Roy questions the adults crying. Liko says that adults can cry too. They're just like us. Then in the background, a person thanks them. Turns out, this is Kabu, the Motostoke gym leader, and that's where the episode ends. This is a nice background story for both Al Creamy and Murdoch. In the story about Kid, this episode focuses on the adults, and I think from time to time, that stuff is needed to flesh out the Pokemon story. It gives us a peek into Murdoch's psyche too, as we learn a bit more about the things that he's worried about or things that bother him, even though he seems to be the most mature person of the Rising Bolt Tackler. There weren't a lot of crazy things that happened here, but it was a fun episode to give some deeper characterizations to members of the Rising Bolt Tackler. Even though this episode is really a setup for the next episode with Kabu, this episode was handled very maturely, including a rarely talked about message to kids about adults. So for that, I appreciate this episode. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the 20th episode of Pokemon Horizons titled Kabu's Battle Training just dropped. In this episode, our heroes battle against the Fire-type gym leader of the Galar region. How does it go? Let's find out. At the end of the last episode, Kabu was in the sweet store where Mitchell and Murdoch were. So when this episode begins, we find out that he's just out here for his morning run and just stopped by quickly for sweets. But before Roy can ask him about the Black Rayquaza, he is gone again, running back towards his gym. Liko and Roy follow him towards the gym, and when they get there, they meet his gym apprentice, Wakaba. She agrees to take them to meet Kabu, and while on their way there, they have a conversation about the type of person Kabu is. We learn that Kabu is someone who's very passionate and is constantly training himself to be better. Once inside, Roy asks him about the shiny Rayquaza and shows Kabu the ancient Pokeball. Roy talks about how much he wants to see it and catch it again, and Liko talks about how much the shiny Rayquaza is responsible for her being where she is, so she wants to know more about it. Seeing their determination, Kabu decides he wants to help train them for battle since Roy wants to catch the Rayquaza. In order to do so, he has them do his gym challenge. Here, it's different from the game, where you have to catch or battle Pokemon. Here, it's Liko versus Roy, and there's a bunch of Litwick around. Liko and Sprigatito have to try and put out all the fires of the Litwick in the arena, while Roy and Fuecoco have to try to get all of them lit up. First to completely get either side done wins. The specific exercise is to train Sprigatito's Leafage and Fuecoco's Ember. At first, the two struggle because they don't really have a strategy of what to do and are just spamming their move. However, soon, Liko understands how to go about it. She changes up how she uses Leafage in order to take out the flames of Litwick. Some are sharp, some are bigger. Roy, on the other hand, just continues to use a barrage of Ember, and eventually, Fuecoco gets exhausted and collapses due to hunger. So they take a break and feed the Pokemon, and here, Roy is inspired by the words of Kabu after his struggles. When the challenge resumes, this time, Roy begins quickly lighting up the Litwick. He has Fuecoco sing and use Ember at the same time, which makes him more powerful. He quickly gains ground and even surpasses Liko's point total. At one point, Liko can stop Roy from winning by continuing to go hard against a group of Litwick that are bunched up, but she doesn't, because she sees how much Fuecoco wants to win. Eventually, Roy wins the challenge. Kabu then wants to battle both of them in a double battle with Wakaba as his partner to see how far they've come. Kabu brings out his Centiskorch, while Wakaba brings out Roly-Coly. We get to see how awesome Centiskorch is here, which makes me really sad because I had hoped that Ash would get a Centiskorch in Journeys. The Centiskorch has Flash Fire, so Ember doesn't do that much damage, and Leafage doesn't do much damage either since it's 4-time resistant to Grass with the type it is. It relentlessly attacks with Flame Wheel and Bug Bite. Even with blinded with Leafage, it's still able to take out both Pokemon with Flamethrower. Liko doesn't know what to do and is getting worried in this situation, but Roy continues to encourage Fuecoco, telling it not to give up. It eventually gets up, and the Ember he's been training the entire episode turns into a Flamethrower, as we get a clash of Flamethrowers between Centiskorch and Fuecoco. But Centiskorch is too strong, and its Flamethrower overpowers Fuecoco, causing Fuecoco to be unable to battle. With Liko being the only one left for her team, Kabu tells Wakaba to take on Liko and her Sprigatito. This will be her battle test, that she hasn't succeeded in yet so far, but she wants to really bad in order to become a gym trainer. It's a short battle here, but Fuecoco has a type advantage here and is stronger. It avoids the Smackdown and Rapid Spin, while continually hitting Roly-Coly with Leafage. Seeing how bad Wakaba wants to win and become a gym trainer, Liko forfeits, giving Wakaba the win. This does the opposite of what Liko thinks will happen, however. Wakaba is upset that Liko is just throwing the match. She says that even if she were to become a gym trainer, doing it this way wouldn't mean much, and she runs away upset. As Kabu tells Liko, by forfeiting like that, Liko undermined the integrity of the battle for both of them. Kabu tells her that even though she's kind, she can't afford to think about other people's feelings during the heat of battle. He asks her how would she feel if she were trying her hardest and then the person she's just going against didn't try at all. Even Sprigatito wanted to continue to battle, and Sprigatito's a bit upset at her. So by doing that, she wasn't just hurting Wakaba's feeling, but also the feeling of her Pokemon. After hearing this, she apologized to Sprigatito before going to find Wakaba. When she gets to where Wakaba is at, they both apologize to each other, Wakaba for yelling at her and Liko for throwing the battle. Wakaba then gives Liko encouragement to do her best in the future and says that she's going to continue to train. Once they're all back, Kabu lets them know about the shiny Rayquaza he saw. He says that he saw it while in his morning runs, and it went to the west of Galar. What's in the west of Motostoke? Galar Mine number 2. So, our heroes will be heading there soon before they go to Hammerlock to meet Liko's grandmother. The episode ends with a bit of additional dialogue that Liko and Kabu had at the end of the episode. Kabu tells her that winning doesn't have to be what makes her a trainer. She can try to find her own path, and that is the end of the episode. This is a strange episode overall. It's good, but it's just a bit strange. It's a training episode with some character development, which is good. However, the character development portion of the episode is a bit strange. Yes, Liko's always been a kind person, but she's never hesitated and stopped in the middle of battles in the past. It feels like that trait kinda came out of nowhere this episode. However, I do understand why. It seems like they're going to have Roy as the more battle-focused of the two, while Liko will do something else. What is it, I'm not sure, but it seems like this episode was to set that idea in motion. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Roy had much better character development this episode, I thought. His optimistic and persistent nature shines through, while also showing that he's someone who doesn't give up easily. And that sort of positive outlook is rewarded when his Fuecoco learns Flamethrower. Just a few episodes ago, Fuecoco was trying to be like Charizard, and now it seems closer to that goal, which is awesome to see. There wasn't anything much new done with Kabu here. He's shown as a passionate and strong trainer, but besides that, the only other thing we learn is that he's a very mentor-type figure. Regardless, it was fun to see the Galar gym leaders after not being able to see them much in Pokemon Journeys. Hopefully in the future, we get to see more of them that we haven't had a chance to see yet. Overall, this is a solid episode, and this seems to be leading to something new for Liko. I can't wait to see what it ends up becoming. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 21 of Pokemon Horizons titled A Hatenna All Alone just dropped, and Liko finally gets a brand new Pokemon in this episode. However, there is a significance to the type of Pokemon she gets, so let's talk about it. While this episode is about Liko catching a brand new Pokemon, it's also about continuing from the previous episode and really trying to dive deep into Liko's emotions. The setup of this episode is that a Hatenna goes into a hut into the mountains because it's scared of lightning and thunderstorm. The episode begins with Liko finishing her online classes, and she's having a video chat with Anne. Anne starts asking her about the essay that they're working on for class, which is about what she wants to be, but Liko says that she really hasn't started working on it because she doesn't know what to write about yet. Again, continuing the discussion from the previous episode where she quit the battle because she didn't want to hurt another trainer's feeling, it's an interesting dilemma to put our main character into. Here we also find out that Anne herself has caught a Sandshrew. Our heroes then head to the Galar mines to do some investigations, and while on their way to the mines, Liko continues to think about how everyone around her has a goal and they're working towards it. Anne wants to battle with her Oshawott, Roy really wants to face off against Rayquaza. Meanwhile, she doesn't know what type of trainer she wants to be. And then she thinks about something that seems so absurd. It's a small thing, but it really bothered me. She says she doesn't know if Sprigatito wants to be stronger. How? I know this is supposed to be a moment where Liko's trying to find herself, but even if Liko was just like Go and wanted to just focus on capturing Pokemon, you would think that she could easily tell that of course Sprigatito wants to get stronger. Anytime it battles, it goes super hard. Why would she think otherwise? Again, I know it's just a small thing, but that annoyed me. However, before our heroes can get to the Galar mine, it starts raining really hard, so they end up going to a mountain hut for shelter, and that's where they happen to find the same Hatenna from before. After they notice it and learn about it from the Pokedex, but don't understand what the Pokedex means by it suffers from strong emotions, Sprigatito keeps purring near it. Liko realizes that Hatenna hasn't made a noise yet, so Liko gets worried and takes her back to Molly. Molly looks at it and tells Liko that it seems fine physically, however, it could be that her mind is troubled. The Pokedex talked about how this Pokemon could get exhausted if emotions around it are too strong, and while Liko doesn't realize it here, that includes Liko's own emotions. Liko decides to look after it on her own for a while until it gets better, and then they'll return it. After drying her clothes in the furnace room, she takes the opportunity to talk to Dot by bringing her costume. She asks about Hatenna, and Dot gives an example of her being a social media star, how sometimes she gets upset at the comments and sometimes she's happy. However, Dot emotes strong emotion when expressing her frustration sometimes, causing Hatenna to get scared and run away from the room. Then Liko and Dot go looking for it. It ends up in the kitchen where Murdoch and Orla are fighting about how reliable the brave Asagi is against storms, and they end up going at each other, causing Hatenna to leave the kitchen. While here, we do get a funny bit where Murdoch says that this was the first time he spoke to Dot face to face in a while, and that was a great conversation, even though he didn't really talk to her. That's both sad and funny. They then go to Roy, who's trying to make a trap by putting food on top of a box so that hopefully Hatenna would jump in to get the food and then they could grab it in the box. However, all it captures is a Suicune. The Hatenna feels lost in the area as it doesn't even want food from Alcremie, who offers it to it. Instead, it runs away to the top of the ship. Meanwhile, our heroes all decide the best way to find it would be splitting up. Since it's raining, Liko thinks about the first time she was in the ship and how the weather conditions here are similar. She thinks about how she felt lonely when she lost Sprigatito, which is probably how Hatenna is feeling. She remembers then going to the top of the ship, and that's when she realizes that the Hatenna is probably up there. Once she takes the elevator to the top of the ship, she talks to Hatenna about how she felt when she got to the ship first. She also felt lonely and lost, and expressing that in a calm manner allows Hatenna to calm down. It seems to make the Hatenna feel a little bit better, and the Hatenna ends up jumping on her hoodie and goes to sleep before she goes down. Even her friends notice how Liko's looking more cheery now. Like I said, the Hatenna wasn't just reacting to it being lonely, it was also reacting to Liko's emotions because she was also feeling lonely and lost. So when she's finally able to talk it out and that makes her feel better, it makes both of them feel better. The next morning, she tells everyone about how she got it to relax as it's still in her hoodie. However, Liko doesn't think that Hatenna can handle the high emotions in the ship, so it would probably be best to return it. They get back to the mountain hut and let it go. However, Sprigatito sees that Liko is sad to let it walk, so it goes to talk to Hatenna, who then swiftly jumps back in Liko's arm. It wants to join Liko. Fried gives her a Pokeball to make the capture official, and Liko finally gets her official capture of this series. And with that capture, Liko realizes that she's good at understanding how Pokemon feel, so that's the type of trainer she wants to be. Now, I'm not sure where that's going to lead. Her goal now is something similar to Ash at the end of Journeys, where he wanted to become friends with all the Pokemon. While that's something to aspire for, that's not really a real tangible goal. It seems like this series, at least for Liko's arc, will go the same way. We could get some more tangible goals in the future, but as of now, it seems like she'll be more the character in the series that deals with the more emotional core, while Roy does the more action portion of it. They seemingly split the character of Ash into two to make two separate protagonists. It'll be interesting to see how the series handles this moving forward. Also, technically, is this Liko's second or third capture? Do we count the Arboliva she has? I guess that's more of a special occasion Pokemon that only arises when the pendant is in trouble. So yeah, I guess this would be her first official capture that she can use anytime. I hope that this isn't like Chloe from Pokemon Journey, so hopefully Liko does end up getting more than just one Pokemon for the future, but again, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Regardless, with that now out of the way, our heroes now head to the Galar Mine, and we get the return of a familiar foe. Amethio and his group are also heading to the Galar Mine to find Rayquaza. However, he's on his own missions, as the explorers have assigned other people to the tasks of Liko's pendant. Instead, this is his own task. And now with them returning, and our heroes heading to the same location, we know that a conflict will be starting soon, so this is where we end the episode. Overall, I enjoyed this episode. While it was slow paced, I think that was needed. We know that the action's about to pick up as the Rayquaza plot comes back into frame, and for a while it felt like we weren't going anywhere with Liko's character. Her now getting an additional Pokemon, as well as some development for the type of trainer she wants to be, gives her something to work towards, even if the goals aren't as tangible as getting something like 8 badges. I hope that we get to see more of Hatenna in the Galar Mine portions of the story coming up too. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 22 of Pokemon Horizons titled Clash. The Galar Mine just dropped, and in this episode, our heroes head to the Galar Mine to search for Rayquaza, but come across something very different. What is it? Let's find out. Our heroes immediately know that this Galar Mine trip is going to be tough because Hatenna is scared outside of the Galar Mines, and that isn't because Liko is scared or Roy is too excited. Once inside, they're wowed by the mine and how it looks. However, they also see a lot of mine Pokemon running away from them. And while Fried is explaining to them why Rayquaza could be at the Galar Mines, Sprigatito and Fuecoco get distracted by the Pokemon in the mines, causing Liko and Roy to get split up from Fried as they chase after their own Pokemon. They get lost and call Fried in the mines, who says he will search for them. However, instead of staying put, Roy hears the cry of a Pokemon coming through one of the hallways in the mine, so he runs that direction, forcing Liko to follow him. Also coming inside the mines, as we saw from the last episode, are the explorers. As Roy continues to look for Rayquaza, they come across a group of Pokemon inside of a hole in the cave, afraid. They don't come out until Liko gives them some food, but even still, they're scared and go back into the hole once they hear a loud cry of a Pokemon in the mines again. Eventually, the Zubat of the group takes Liko and Roy to where all the miners are. The miners are all exhausted laying on the floor with their Pokemon, and they tell Liko that a giant Pokemon appeared in the mine, causing them to all lose their energy. Liko calls Nurse Joy and gets all of the miners in the minecart and tells them to be on their way and be safe. They know that something major is happening here, so they go to look for Fried. This creates the perfect opportunity for Onia and Zerk to appear to battle Liko and Fuecoco. Meanwhile, Amethio goes after and finds Fried, and immediately challenges him to a battle. Golduck and Rhyhorn versus Sprigatito and Fuecoco. However, before Onia's Golduck can attack, Captain Pikachu arrives and sends it the other direction. Then, from the floor, arrives a dark aura that bursts into the cave. And while the Pokedex and our heroes don't know what this is, we the audience do know that this is Galarian Moltres. For posterity's sake, Galarian Moltres' Pokedex entry reads, "This Pokemon's sinister, flame-like aura will consume the spirit of any creature it hits. Victims become burned-out shadows of themselves." And this explains all of the exhausted miners in the Pokemon in the area. This Pokemon is also super powerful, as it unleashes a bevy of air slashes to take down the Explorer's Pokemon. And that is also because, as Liko notices, it has an ancient Pokeball, meaning it's one of Lucius's Pokemon from his ancient adventures. Lucius, if you don't recall, is the name of the ancient traveler that even motivated Roy to go on his own journey. The explorers decide to retreat, and before Cap can battle Galarian Moltres, it once again unleashes its aura, causing everyone in the area to lose their energy. Galarian Moltres then begins attacking our heroes. Cap protects Sprigatito from getting hit, and gets hit massively by Air Slash in the process. Eventually, through perseverance, Roy and Fuecoco are able to stand up against the aura. However, Fuecoco's flamethrower is no match for the Moltres' gust attack. Once again, it's Cap who breaks through the aura and saves Fuecoco and takes the brunt of the damage, getting badly injured in the process. Meanwhile, in the battle against Amicio and Freed, Amicio is using Phantom Force to attack Charizard, and once it gets hit by Dragon Claw, Weak Armor activates, causing it to speed up. While Freed is dealing with that, Liko knows that if they don't leave the area, they're finished. So she also breaks through the Moltres' aura. She then picks up Cap and gets ready to go. Roy simultaneously is in the floor, shocked at how powerful this Pokemon is. Liko snaps him out of it, and they both take the minecart and begin leaving the cave. Moltres, however, follows them through the cave, and Fuecoco has to use Flamethrower to give our heroes some additional distance. As Freed and Amicio continue battling, they're interrupted when they see the chase unfolding, as Freed stops Moltres from chasing Liko and Roy with a well-placed Charizard Flamethrower, causing it to now shift attention towards the two battlers. As Liko and Roy continue to get outside from the minecart, Freed and Amicio are left in the cave, now facing a mad Galarian Moltres, and that is where the episode ends. This is an episode that leaves a lot of questions to be answered. It's a pretty simple premise, and the majority of the episode is spent on first the mystery aspect in the first half, and then fighting in the second half. There aren't any major plot developments beside Galarian Moltres appearing and attacking everyone. The biggest thing about this being that it's also an ancient Pokemon. This probably means that my theory that Liko will end up collecting all of the ancient Pokemon is out of the window, as they probably wouldn't give her a legendary Pokemon this early in the series. I know she already has Terapagos, but that's one of those Pokemon that activates random. She can't really rely on it. And I guess even if she did get the ancient Pokeball, that would also be the case with Galarian Moltres, so maybe I could be wrong. The way I could see this going though is that Liko is able to somehow calm down the Galarian Moltres and cause it to fly back to either the Crown Tundra or go back to its Pokeball. Now what they would do with that ancient Pokeball, I'm not sure. With how powerful it's being shown as, it'll be interesting to see where the story goes next. This also makes me wonder where the Rayquaza plot is going to go and if it'll connect to Liko's grandmother in the future that our heroes are heading towards. Lots of questions still to be answered, but there's a lot of intrigue in the next few episodes. This episode felt like the setup, so I can't wait to see where the story's heading. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 23 of Pokemon Horizons titled The Blazing Galarian Moltres just dropped, and after struggling last episode, our heroes head back to fight Galarian Moltres. Will they be able to calm it down and beat it this time? Let's find out. Right off the bat, this episode feels like it's missing a big chunk of the story. Last episode ended on a cliffhanger where Freed and Amicio were stuck inside of the Galar mines fighting this insanely powerful legendary Pokemon. However, this episode, Freed arrives at the Pokemon Center right after Sprigatito, Fuecoco, and Captain Pikachu are healed, and then when asked about it, just shrugs it off saying, "Oh, it was so difficult to get out of there," with not a flashback or a hint as to what happened or how both Amicio and Freed got out. It feels like there's a solid 5-minute chunk of the episode missing where Freed and Amicio are forced to work together in order to get out of the Galar mines. This isn't the first time this has happened in the series too. It's like they set up these cool ideas in episodes, but then they pay it off screen, which I don't understand. They get a call from Dot, letting them know that the Pokemon they are facing is indeed a Galarian Moltres. However, it seems like in the anime world, not much is known about it. And I do kinda like that it still has a bit of mystique since it's a newer legendary Pokemon in the franchise. After everyone is healed, our trio is trying to come up with plans on how they can try and defeat the Galarian Moltres. Liko says that from what she saw from Hatenna's reaction to it, Galarian Moltres isn't just angry, but also sad. So instead of just trying to defeat it, they should try and calm it down. When Roy's Fuecoco and Watchel fight over a berry, only to both calm down once Liko Sprigatito uses its scent, they get an idea as to what to do. They head back to the mines, and once again, they come across the Galarian Moltres, still angry, and begin to try and implement their strategy. While Roy and Freed take Galarian Moltres' attention by having Fuecoco and Charizard use Flamethrower, Liko Sprigatito would try and add its aroma to leafage and send it towards Moltres, hopefully calming it down. However, the move isn't powerful enough and doesn't reach it the first 2 times they try. Galarian Moltres repels the attack by flapping its wing, creating a gust. Even when Liko rides on Charizard to attack it from closer range, it flaps its wing to create the gust to prevent it from being hit by the attack. Liko tries to talk to it to try and figure out why it's so upset, but Galarian Moltres isn't hearing it. It even uses its flame-like aura, and Cap has to prevent it from affecting everyone by using Volt Tackle on it, doing massive damage to itself in the process. Even when the ancient Pokeball Liko has containing Lucius's Arbalava appears, the Galarian Moltres is still upset. However, Liko is determined to try and figure out why it's so upset and show it compassion because, as Kabu says, there's more than just battling to being a good Pokemon trainer, and that's what Liko wants to be. She wants to be a trainer that shows compassion to Pokemon. With this belief and Arboliva taking damage from Galarian Moltres, Arboliva's Seed Soar ability activates, putting grassy terrain on the field. This refreshes all of our Pokemon in the field, and it also gives Sprigatito's grass-type moves a much stronger effect. So this time, as Liko uses it multiple times to get it closer to Galarian Moltres. It still isn't working until Freed gets an idea. Since they're inside of a cave, they can use Gust to send the leafage back up to the Galarian Moltres where it can't avoid it in the air. So that's what they do, forcing the move back up in the air and directly onto the Galarian Moltres. Eventually it seems to work as it calms down. Once it lands on the floor, it begins talking to Liko's pendant, and Terapagos comes out. We then see a vision of sorts that Galarian Moltres has, where it's raining, representing its sadness, and Lucius, the ancient adventurer, calming it down. Lucius also says that they'll do something with the Rayquaza, but the vision ends before we can find out what that means. It's most likely referencing the Rayquaza, so I wonder where that story's heading. After all that, Galarian Moltres drops the ancient Pokeball it's holding and returns to its ancient Pokeball. So does Arboliva now. I've seen a couple of people on Twitter freak out about this, and I've talked about this in the past, but people think these are Liko's Pokemon, and I don't know, I don't really consider these Liko's Pokemon. These Pokemon only come out when it's near things or relating to things about the ancient adventurers. It isn't something that Liko can just call on whenever she wants if she just wants to battle someone random. So that's why I don't really consider it her Pokemon. After all of this, Terapagos doesn't go back to being a pendant either. Instead, they have to find it in the cave and take it out with them, hiding it in the process as Kabu arrives to check on the mines. Our heroes meet up with him. They discuss the fact that they had to fight the Moltres and how it went into the Pokeball after trusting Liko, but before they have to talk about Terapagos, who's hiding in Freed's jacket, they leave. For now, since it's not going back to being a pendant, they'll have to figure out what to do with it in the ship. And Liko's happy that this is what adventure feels like. The episode then ends with our heroes heading towards the ship, while the explorers and Amethio, having watched from the sides during this episode, planning on stealing Terapagos from our heroes. While this is an overall great episode in progressing the ancient adventurer story, I do wish that the cliffhanger from last episode wouldn't have just been skipped over like it was. I think that's the main thing that diminishes this episode. And hopefully this isn't an issue here when it gets released in the West, but did anyone feel like the absurd amount of leafage effects made the bitrate of this episode really poor? I'm not sure if anyone else felt that. As for the battle itself, it was interesting because unlike other battles where our heroes have to try and KO a Pokemon, here they're trying to apply a specific strategy and not KO it. And that makes the battle play out a bit more differently than battles typically in the anime. So I found that really interesting. I'm also interested to see where the story of the ancient adventurer is going, as it seems to in the next episode, where our heroes will finally be able to meet Liko's grandmother. I have a suspicion that the ancient adventurer is going to directly relate to Liko's grandmother or family somehow. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 24 of Pokemon Horizons titled Reunion at the Old Castle just dropped, and in this episode, we get a lot of information regarding Liko's grandmother, Terapagos, and a setup for a large battle that's coming up. So let's jump to it. With last episode ending with the pendant turning into Terapagos permanently, this episode begins with our heroes trying to figure out what to do in the Bravasagi before eventually deciding to just ask Liko's grandmother, who probably knows. The group that goes to Liko's grandmother is Liko, Roy, and Freed, with the rest, including Captain Pikachu, staying behind in the Bravasagi. Once they get to Hammerlock, they are taken by Diana's yellow Squawkabilly inside a forest and through a hidden entrance, which is just a stone journey, to the castle where Diana is. While all of this is happening, they're being trailed by Amethio and co, specifically Zerg and Konya. It seems like the reason they disappeared last episode is that they were recording our heroes with their phone after they managed to calm down the Galarian Moltres and were able to capture Terapagos on video. This evidence puts them back on the case, and Hamber decides he will also go. He seems to know about Terapagos and has been keeping it from the rest of the explorers. He's also taken Onyx and Sango with him, as he has an idea as to where our heroes will be. Turns out he has a history with Diana, as we'll learn soon. Once they get to the castle, Arcanine greets them, followed by Diana. Diana's hidden castle here seems to work similar to the Bravasagi, where she has a lot of Pokemon that freely go in and out if they want to stay. She also has a lot of old paintings, and the castle itself is pretty big. Our heroes explain to her how the pendant turned into this Pokemon, and she explains to them that this Pokemon is Terapagos. We don't get a concrete explanation as to if this is a pre-evolution or just a different form. However, she does say that this is a Pokemon that traveled with Lucius, the ancient adventurer. Fried gets excited by the notion of a brand new Pokemon. After they eat, this is where we get some clarification as to how the explorers in the Brave Asagi knew about Liko and what caused the first 2 episodes of the series. Basically, Diana found the pendant when she was a child in her attic. She also found a book discussing Lucius's adventures. This is what caused her to be an adventurer. Throughout her travel in her younger days, she tried to see if she could find any traces of Lucius, but she couldn't, so she had given up that dream 30 years ago. Then, after she had given the pendant to Liko, one day, one of her old friends, Hamber, said that he could help her find Terapagos. However, when she met him, she realized that he was part of some shady organization. That's when she let Liko's mother know that Liko might be in danger, and Liko's mom sent out the Voltacklers, and the rest is history. We also learn here that Rakwa, the thing that we heard for the first time last episode, is the name of the paradise that Lucius sought, and hearing that name causes Terapagos to move around the floor and almost leave the door. I wonder why it's reacting the way it is. As mentioned earlier, when our heroes were going to Diana's castle, they were being trailed by Zur and Konya. However, they lost our heroes when they used the hidden entrance. Later, when Amethio arrives, they continue to look for our heroes until nightfall. Eventually, Amethio notices the Stonejourner and he uses his Ceruledge to attack the Stonejourner to finally find the hidden entrance. So as Diane, after talking about Terapagos, is about to go grab something to show our heroes, she's warned by her Arcanine and the Forest Blipbug that an invasion has occurred. And our heroes who are sitting down also realize this as Amethio comes through the window along with Zur and Konya. As a massive battle is about to occur, Terapagos begins going crazy looking at Amethio, and that's where the episode ends. Now that's a fascinating... Is Amethio somehow directly descendant from Lucius? Why was Terapagos, who was already going crazy throughout the episode as he was nearby, now going crazy looking at him? Does it recognize him somehow? Or is it just getting ready to battle? So many possibilities, and it seems like this might be the first major one-on-one battle for Liko and Roy. I know Roy has the gym battle against Brassius and Liko had the battle against the gym trainer, but those are more practice battles. These upcoming battles here will have a lot on the line, and will show how far both of our trainers have come along in their journey. I can't wait to see. As for this episode, I'm glad we got a lot of the questions answered that we've been asking since the beginning of the series, and it makes sense as we're about to leave the Liko and Roy set-off chapter of Pokemon Horizons. This episode doesn't leave a lot of hints as to what the next chapter of the series will be, however, I have a feeling we'll know more after the next few episodes after this battle. That includes the relationship between Hamber and Diana. But regardless, not giving us much info on Terapagos here is probably the catalyst to where our heroes will go next in the story. I can't wait. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, episode 25 Pokemon Horizons titled Rivals in the Dark Night just dropped, and we get the final episode of the Liko and Roy set-off portion of Pokemon Horizons as a massive battle comes to a head. How is this part of the story going to conclude? Let's talk about it. Since this episode is the final one in the chapter, it's an action-packed episode. The episode begins with us seeing that Hamber is following Amethio to the castle and is about to come in with Onix and his Garganacl and Sango and her Glalie. He says that he only wants to use them as his final trump card. Back at the castle, continuing from last episode, Diana's Arcanine comes in and attacks the explorers while she has her Squawkabilly turn on a hidden passage to send our heroes to safety. However, they're still found by Zur and his Rhyhorn, who breaks through the floor to see where they're going and tells Amethio that our heroes are headed to a nearby tower. Amethio wants them to go after Terapagos while he goes after and battles Fried, who he has tried to have full battles with this entire series so far but has never got the chance to. While going up the tower, Fried calls Murdoch to ask him to pick everyone up. However, Amethio's already at the top of the tower in his Corviknight, so the call is cut short. In order to make sure that the kids don't get caught in the crossfire, he jumps away from the tower to engage with Amethio to battle. We finally get the anticipated battle between the true trainers, Charizard versus Ceruledge. It's a great looking battle, and during this battle, Fried knows he has to be careful not to activate weak armor for Ceruledge. But a smart tactical move by Amethio causes Fried to use Dragon Claw onto Ceruledge, activating weak armor, speeding Ceruledge up massively, putting Charizard on the back foot. Charizard takes a lot of damage with Night Slashes in particular, and Amethio is about to end the battle with a charged attack. This forces Fried, though, to use his trump card. He terrestrializes Charizard into the Dark Charizard and allows him to take the charged attack from Ceruledge before using Terra Blast to KO it. Both Liko and Roy are impressed by this battle and the terrestrialization. However, they have their own issues, as Zur is now coming up the stairs of the tower. Roy decides they need to leave, so they take a ladder downstairs, but waiting there is Onya. It was a trap set by the two to surround them and try and get to Rapagos. Liko and Roy look at each other and know that they will have to battle. We get another awesome battle here, and Liko in particular here looks really strong as she's able to instantly dispatch of Onya and her Golduck, and Roy is able to provide major damage to Zur's Rhyhorn. Meanwhile, back in the castle, Diana's putting all the important books regarding Lucius in a bag. She also seems to have his belt and his personal memoirs. But before she can leave the castle, she's stopped by Hamber and his Dusknoir. Like I said the last episode, Hamber seems to know a lot about Terrapagos. It's even explained here that the term explorers is what Lucius called his friends. Before a confrontation can happen, however, the castle starts being attacked and have explosions go off everywhere. This allows Diana to escape. Even where Fried and Amethio were battling, the tower near them collapses, and it gets really cold here. It's the two explorers, Onyx and Sango, prematurely attacking before Hamber tells them to. Even Onya and Zur knows how much of a mess these two can create, so they recall their Pokemon and leave on their Skarmories. The two then surround Liko and Roy. However, just then, Captain Pikachu arrives. The Rising Voltacklers are here, and Captain Pikachu allows Metagross to pick up Liko and Roy who leave. Sango and Onyx begin going after Pikachu, and Cap is able to dodge a Blizzard by Glalie and Assault Cure by Garganacl before using a Voltackle on Garganacl to send it flying. Seeing this, Sango gets very angry and has her Glalie use self-destruct. However, Fried is able to pick up Cap and leave before any damage can be done. Diane's also able to get to the top of the Bravasagi in her Arcanine. As the dust settles, it's the villains looking up at our heroes as they leave in the Bravasagi. The next morning, Liko gets Lucius' memoirs from her grandmother. We also learn here the remaining of Lucius's Pokemons. We obviously had Shiny Rayquaza, Arboliva, and Galarian Moltres, but we also find out that in that group is Lapras, Kleavor, and Entei. And since Liko believes in the story of Lucius, she'll be going on an adventure to find the 6 hero Pokemon as they're called. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. Back in the Explorer's base, Gibeon and Hamber discuss what happened, and they said that the cogs are moving and their dreams are about to... and that's where we end the episode. Like I guessed in the last video, this episode was more action oriented to wrap everything up leading to the story so far. We didn't really get that much plot progression, however we did get some information regarding the remaining Pokemon that our heroes will be looking to, which will set up the story for where our heroes are heading next. And at the end of this chapter, it finally feels like they combine both Liko's and Roy's goal. Even though Liko and Roy's goal are slightly different, they all both have to start at the same exact position. Roy wants to face Rayquaza, and Liko just wants to meet all of the Pokemon. So it allows both of them to be in the same goal while having separate motivations. As for what the explorers want, while we really didn't get any hints to what they really mean, it does feel like the theories that fans have from the games that Terrapagos can just kind of make things come true, things like the Paradox Pokemon, that is what our antagonists might be after. It'll be interesting to see where the story goes as we learn more about this Pokemon and this phenomenon. But overall, I thought the battles in this episode looked fantastic, and I can't wait to see the next chapter of this series.